Chapter 1675 Crafting His First Treasure. Chapter 1675 Crafting His First Treasure. The refined obsidian dragon returned to the workshop several hours later with a leather pouch filled with materials. He tossed the bag before Yuan and said, "If you can craft a treasure while using half of the materials in there, he'll consider you worthy." Yuan grabbed the bag and poured all of the materials out. There were 21 materials in total, and he didn't recognize any of them. However, instead of panicking, Yuan smiled and muttered, "Interesting. This will be fun." He suddenly sat before the materials, grabbed one of them and started inspecting it in silence. The refined obsidian dragon's eyebrows twitched at Yuan's actions, and he sneered inwardly, "At least he isn't completely incompetent." After spending several hours examining every single material there in great detail, Yuan closed his eyes and began doing mental simulations. "What's he doing?" Long Yeyou asked the refined obsidian dragon. Despite being a blacksmith himself, he didn't understand Yuan's actions. The refined obsidian dragon narrowed his gaze at Yuan and pondered for a moment before responding, "I believe he's doing mental stimulations. He's basically crafting the treasure inside his head right now." "What? You can do something like that? I have never even heard of this until today." Long Yeyou couldn't fathom crafting treasures inside his mind. "It's possible, but it's extremely difficult to achieve since you need to know the materials perfectly, and you also need to be incredibly knowledgeable and experienced in blacksmithing." The refined obsidian dragon clenched his fists in frustration as he spoke. "Mental simulations? Ah. Even I cannot do mental simulations. There's no way he's doing it properly. This is just a waste of time." He mocked inwardly. A few hours later, Yuan stood up and said, "Okay, I am ready to craft the treasure. Do you have a hammer I can borrow?" The refined obsidian dragon grabbed an old hammer and tossed it to him. Yuan looked at the worn hammer with a slight smile and said, "I'll only make you look worse if I pass the test with this half-broken tool. Here, you can use mine." Long Yeyou retrieved his personal hammer and offered it to Yuan. However, he shook his head, refusing to accept it. "Thanks, but I don't need it." He walked to the anvil and controlled the materials from afar with his Qi manipulation, throwing all of them into the furnace. "What the?" Long Yejun's eyes widened at his bizarre actions. "Ah. What the fuck is he doing? How can he throw all of the materials in her at once?" The refined obsidian dragon burst out laughing. They were taught to deal with one material at a time, so Yuan's actions made him look like a complete fool who knew nothing about smithing. "I can't believe I actually thought he was competent even for a second. He had me fooled in the beginning." Yuan completely ignored the refined obsidian dragon's loud mockery and focused on the materials inside the furnace. A few days later, Yuan retrieved a single piece of material from the furnace. This material had no impurities and was perfectly refined. When the refined obsidian dragon saw this, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. "What the fuck? That's impossible!" he cried out loud. He actually managed to refine that many materials at once, even though each one needed to be handled differently and required a different refining time? Long Yeyou muttered in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the feat. The refined obsidian dragon felt an intense urge to rush over and inspect the refined material up close, but he held back. It wasn't out of respect for Yuan but rather because of an unspoken rule among blacksmiths to never interrupt one once they have begun their work. After inspecting the refined material and being satisfied with it, Yuan placed it on top of the black anvil before him and started hammering away with the damaged tool. The refined obsidian dragon felt his heart skip a beat with every strike Yuan delivered to the material, his ears captivated by the mythical sound that resonated each time the hammer made contact. "What is this sound? How is he creating such a beautiful melody with that tool?" Long Yeyou muttered, his eyes wide with awe. Even Yingzi, who knew nothing about smithing, could sense that something extraordinary was unfolding before her. She found herself completely absorbed by the performance, unable to look away. The refined material, his hammering techniques, the sound it produces, it's beyond even my understanding. The refined obsidian dragon fell to his knees as the crushing reality of the vast difference in skill between himself and Yuan set in. It was an unfathomable gap, leaving him overwhelmed and humbled. "It turns out I was the ignorant one all along." Tears flowed from his eyes. After striking the anvil for several hours without pause, Yuan finally completed the treasure, which took the form of a sword. It radiated a powerful aura that would easily be graded as a peak-quality Empyrean-grade treasure in the 9 heavens. Yuan walked to the refined obsidian dragon, who was still on his knees, and placed the treasure before him. "I'm done. Please examine it." "You're done?" Already? The refined obsidian dragon muttered in a dazed voice. It's a bit slower than usual, but it can't be helped since I am still rusty, so thank you for giving me this chance to warm up. The refined obsidian dragon slowly reached for the sword before him, but he stopped himself centimeters away and withdrew his hand. I don't deserve to touch it, let alone examine it. I'm also not qualified to test you. I apologize for my ignorance and disrespectful behavior earlier. I hope you'll forgive me, Master Yuan. The refined obsidian dragon apologized in a sincere tone as he kowtowed respectfully before Yuan. Long Yeyou stared at the scene, his face filled with bewilderment. He could never have imagined witnessing the refined obsidian dragon behave in such a manner. He's showing Brother Yuan more respect than he does to the dragon god. He sighed with a bittersweet smile. Chapter 1676 The Refined Obsidian Dragon's Sincerity? Chapter 1676 The Refined Obsidian Dragon's Sincerity. I don't mind forgiving you for your unruly behavior, but I will need you to prove your sincerity first, Yuan said to the refined obsidian dragon. How can I show my sincerity? I will do anything. The refined obsidian dragon shouted. Although I can make do with the materials I possess currently, it would be great if I had more. Do you understand what I mean? Yuan spoke with a calm expression on his face. It took a second, but the refined obsidian dragon responded with great enthusiasm. Of course I understand. It would be an honor if Master Yuan used my materials for his creations. Please wait here while I gather my finest materials. The refined obsidian dragon rushed out of the workshop the very next moment. Brother Yuan, how many more surprises are under your wings? Where in God's name did you learn how to craft treasures like that? Long Yeyou asked him with shining eyes. I am mostly self-taught, Yuan said with a calm smile. Self-taught? Surely you are teasing me. Long Yeyou didn't believe him even for a second. I am serious. How long did it take for you to achieve that level of mastery? It must have taken billions of years. I am beginning to wonder if you're actually older than me. Long Yeyou continued to inquire. I am definitely nowhere as old as you, and it took me several thousand years to achieve my current level. Long Yeyou was speechless. It only took him several thousand years to achieve his level of mastery? My nap lasts longer than that, he exclaimed inwardly. However, after thinking about it, Yuan had managed to conquer the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp and the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation in a little over a year. If I see it in that manner, I guess a few thousand years is actually a very long time. By the way, Yuan suddenly grabbed the sword head just created off the ground and offered it to Long Yeyou. You can have this. What? Are you sure? Long Yeyou stared at him with wide eyes. He nodded. Take it. You've been extremely helpful to me without expecting anything in return, so consider this my way of thanking you. Long Yeyou nodded and accepted the sword. When he held the treasure in his grasp, and its aura seeped into his skin, his entire body trembled. What a masterpiece! The treasure I crafted is trash in comparison. Don't undersell your own creation. That earring is also a piece of art. Yuan smiled. I am only speaking the truth, Brother Yuan. I don't know how to explain this, but I have never held a treasure like this before. Compared to the other treasures, there's just something fundamentally different about this treasure. Sometime later, the refined obsidian dragon returned to the workshop. This time he brought back with him an even larger sack. Here you go, Master Yuan. You can use these materials as you please. The refined obsidian dragon poured the materials on the ground, forming a small mountain. Yuan's eyebrows twitched as he took in the sheer quantity of treasures laid out before him. In his past life he had encountered all sorts of treasures, including some of the most valuable and powerful materials. Yet, every single material before him now was entirely unknown. If I brought these treasures back to the 9 heavens, they'd be priceless as one-of-kind treasures, Yuan thought to himself. However, the refined obsidian dragon was not finished and continued, Of course, I didn't forget about the other thing. He retrieved a black rock and offered it to Yuan. This is my most valuable material, the infinite obsidian. I found this rock floating in the infinite expanse 600 million years ago, and I have been trying to refine it since then. Unfortunately, I lack the skills and experience to refine it, much less turn it into a treasure. However, I believe you, Master Yuan, will be able to achieve what I could not. Yuan accepted the rock and inspected it with immense interest. His eyes flickered as he examined every little detail. What a mythical material. Although he didn't know what kind of treasure it was, Yuan could tell it was as valuable as the materials he used as the core of number 1 under heaven. No, this thing might be even more powerful. If I use this to enhance number one under heaven, who knows what will happen. Just the mere thought of enhancing his masterpiece sent chills through Yuan's entire being. He had always believed that number one under heaven was already a perfect treasure, beyond any further improvement. Yet, the appearance of this unknown material had turned his understanding on its head, igniting a surge of excitement within him. Unfortunately, my cultivation is lacking. I will need to improve my cultivation before I can even attempt to refine this material. Thank you. I will put this treasure to good use. You have also proved your sincerity, so I'll forgive you and let bygones be bygones, he said to the refined obsidian dragon after putting the infinite obsidian inside his spatial ring. Your words mean more than you can fathom, Master Yuan. He nodded and said, I am going to start crafting my treasure now. Hearing this, the refined obsidian dragon made a swift grasping motion toward the massive hammer hanging on the wall. As it flew through the air, the hammer began to shrink, transforming until it was small enough to be held comfortably, even by an ordinary human. Please use this hammer, Master Yuan. Yuan accepted the hammer and smiled. It's a nice hammer. Thank you very much. The refined obsidian dragon looked as if he was about to cry. This guy has gone crazy. Long Yeyou looked at the refined obsidian dragon while shaking his head inwardly. Master Yuan, do you mind if I watch you craft? I swear I won't disturb you. The refined obsidian dragon then asked with begging eyes. Yuan nodded, sure. Thank you very much. The refined obsidian dragon actually shed tears this time. Chapter 1677 Robes of Destruction. Chapter 1677 Robes of Destruction. Yuan sat before the mountain of materials and proceeded to inspect each one for several days. After completing his inspection a week later, Yuan closed his eyes and began doing simulations inside his head. Several more days later, he stood up, picked the needed materials from the pile, and tossed them directly into the furnace. It's finally time, the refined obsidian dragon exclaimed with excitement, his eyes gleaming like a child about to enter his favorite ride in an amusement park after waiting in line for hours. While the materials were being refined, Yuan retrieved the Dragon of Destruction skin and number one under heaven, using it to cut the tough skin. What is that treasure? The refined obsidian dragon's eyes popped out of their sockets after seeing number one under heaven. Long Yeyou swallowed nervously and mumbled in a dazed voice, no wonder why he didn't even bat an eyelid when giving me that sword. That's a true masterpiece. By the time Yuan finished cutting up the skin, the materials inside the furnace just finished their refinement. After retrieving the materials, he immediately began combining the Dragon of Destruction's skin and the refined materials. Clang, clang, clang. Beautiful sounds filled the workshop. His movement and techniques are even better than before. The refined obsidian dragon's jaw dropped. So he wasn't joking when he said he was rusty. Long Yeyou swallowed nervously. It's too vast. The refined obsidian dragon suddenly mumbled in a dazed voice. What is? Long Yeyou asked. Our difference. I knew he was much better than me, but I could have never imagined it was to such an extent. I'm no different than a baby in his eyes. Don't punch yourself down too much. You're still one of the best blacksmiths in the primal expanse. Long Yeyou sighed. The refined obsidian dragon suddenly spat on the ground. One of the best? Don't you ever say that to me again. I feel nothing but shame when I recall how prideful I was before Master Yuan opened my eyes. I was just a frog in a well, unaware of how truly vast the sky is. A few days later. True Divine Blacksmith. Description. All of your creations below celestial grade will always result in peak quality. Yuan looked at the result of his work with a satisfied smile. Robes of Destruction. Grade, Celestial, Quality, Peak. Description. A piece of art crafted by player Yuan. It exudes a menacing aura. When worn, the wearer will be able to use the technique Dragon of Destruction's Ultimate Chaos once every 72 hours. Increases the wearer's physical defense by 100,000%. Dragon of Destruction scales will automatically activate when the wearer's life is threatened, negating all damage for 10 seconds, 30 days cooldown. This treasure is indestructible. Dragon of Destruction's Ultimate Chaos. Description. Absorbs a portion of all damage taken, which can then be released with up to 1000% increased power. Yuan immediately wore the Robes of Destruction, a black and red outer garment that appeared simple yet elegant. I am speechless, Master Yuan. I thought I couldn't respect you any more than I already was, but you've proven me wrong. The refined obsidian dragon fell to his knees and started kowtowing to Yuan. "You're exaggerating." Yuan smiled. "Please? Can this humble dragon take a closer look at the completed treasure?" he begged. "Sure. I will forever be in your debt." The refined obsidian dragon jumped to his feet and rushed over to inspect the robes of destruction. "Does it have a name yet?" he asked. Yuan nodded. "Robes of destruction. A powerful name, befitting of someone of your exalted stature." Refined obsidian dragon nodded. Yuan could have never expected the refined obsidian dragon to be so good at kissing ass. "Are you going to make more treasures?" Long Yeyou suddenly asked him. "Yes, but not from scratch. I am going to upgrade an existing treasure next," he revealed. "Upgrading an existing treasure? You can do something like that?" Refined obsidian dragon exclaimed in shock. He always thought that once a treasure was completed, it could no longer be altered. "They'll show you how it's done in a moment," Yuan said. Refined obsidian dragon nodded and swiftly backed away, returning to his original location. Yuan retrieved the starry abyss and the baneful crystal, the treasure head acquired at the center of baneful dragon's poisonous swamp. That dagger gives off a similar aura to his sword. The refined obsidian dragon noticed this detail and mused out loud, unaware they were both soul weapons, something that did not exist within the primal expanse due to a lack of usage of weapons. "And that material, it gives me the shivers." "What is it?" "That treasure belonged to the poison dragon monarch, baneful dragon," Long Yeyou said. "I see. But will he be okay handling such a poisonous material? While his smithing abilities are second to none, his cultivation on the other hand. Oh, he'll be fine. He acquired it from the very center of the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp, after all." "Seriously? Just how talented is he?" "You have no idea." Long Yeyou chuckled. Their conversation stopped at that point when Yuan started working. "Jiran, it will be a little chaotic for a bit. Please bear with it," Yuan warned him before tossing both the starry abyss and the baneful crystal inside the furnace. When he retrieved them from the furnace a few hours later, only the starry abyss remained, glowing purple and blue. He fused the completed treasure with the material while they were inside the furnace. "I have tried doing that before, but it would always completely mess up the treasure, so I figured it was impossible." Refined obsidian dragon sighed. Sometime later, Yuan gazed at the starry abyss with a satisfied smile. The once fully black dagger now shimmered with shades of purple and blue, resembling a vibrant nebula. Chapter 1678 Starry Abyss Upgrade. Chapter 1678 Starry Abyss Upgrade, Mark of the Baneful. Description: when this weapon inflicts damage, the victim will be inflicted with the Mark of the Baneful. Those affected by Mark of the Baneful will be severely poisoned and take continuous damage until their life is completely extinguished. The poison damage will increase over time. Mark of the Baneful can only be dispelled by the Baneful Abyss. Revenge of the Baneful. Description: whenever someone inflicted with Mark of the Baneful dies, their body will explode, automatically releasing a poison mist in a 100-meter radius. Those caught in the poison mist will also be inflicted with Mark of the Baneful. Poison acceleration. Description: the Baneful Abyss will accelerate the effects of all poison in its vicinity. Poison absorption. Description: the Baneful Abyss has the ability to absorb all poison to enhance its own strength. Even without needing to test its abilities, Yuan could tell that the poison within the Baneful Abyss rivaled even Heaven's Bane. Revenge of the Baneful. This will allow me to kill a crowds of enemies with extreme ease, Yuan thought to himself after reading its second ability. After its upgrade, the Baneful Abyss has transformed into a terrifying weapon that, if misused, could turn the heavens upside down. What an ominous aura that weapon now exudes. Even I don't dare to approach it. Refined obsidian dragon swallowed nervously after sensing the Baneful Abyss' sinister aura, even taking a few steps back. It gives off the same dangerous aura as the Baneful dragon's poisonous swamp. Long Yeyou commented. Yuan looked at Refined obsidian dragon and showed a teasing smile. "You don't want to inspect this? I'll even let you touch it." Refined obsidian dragon began sweating as he started making excuses. "I don't dare touch it. It's too much for a humble blacksmith such as myself. I would only dirty your beautiful creation." "It's fine. Come give it a touch. But don't touch the blade. You might die." Yuan beckoned. Refined obsidian dragon cried inwardly as he reluctantly approached Yuan. However, once he got closer and saw just how beautiful the dagger was, his passion overwhelmed his fear. "Wow. What a truly unique treasure. I can even feel a soul residing inside. You can tell? This is what's called a soul weapon. They're different from ordinary treasures as they give birth to their own consciousness. Such a miraculous treasure exists? Long Yeyou also approached them to take a closer look. A soul weapon, how do you make something like this? He then asked. Some treasures have the potential to become a soul weapon if you use it long enough, Yuan explained. Does that mean I can turn the sword you gave me into a soul weapon? Long Yeyou asked. It's possible. He acknowledged. I guess I should start learning to wield the sword now. Long Yeyou mumbled. By the way, refined Obsidian Dragon, this hammer of yours has already begun forming its consciousness. If you continue to use it, it should become a soul weapon in the future. Really? Refined Obsidian Dragon was immensely delighted to hear this information. Anyway, I'm going to continue crafting some more treasures. I still have plenty of Dragon of Destruction skin left. Yuan suddenly said. I also have the sky-splitting dragon's material too. Yuan resumed his mental simulations shortly after. A few hours later, he tossed the sky-splitting dragon's treasure into the furnace before he began cutting up the Dragon of Destruction's skin. Looks like he's going to make a new pair of shoes to replace the ones I destroyed next. Long Yeyou muttered. Sure enough, Yuan wanted to replace the Stygian boots next. Sometime later. Boots of Swift Destruction. Grade, Celestial, Quality, Peak. Description, a treasure crafted by player Yuan. When worn, the wearer will be able to use the technique Sky-Sundering Steps and Lightning Strides. Grants the wearer immunity to most movement restrictions. This equipment can be charged with Lightning Chi to increase the wearer's speed by up to 1,000%. Sky-Sundering Steps. Description, a movement technique that allows the wearer to turn into lightning and travel at the speed of light. Lightning Strides. Description, traverse the heavens at unimaginable speed. Instantly move up to 100,000 meters in any direction in the blink of an eye. Yuan slipped on the boots of Swift Destruction, their sleek black design accented with bold red soles, perfectly complementing his robes of destruction. How much longer before the Dragon God Festival begins? Yuan asked Long Yeyou. We still have about 10 months. Do you plan on training some more? He nodded. But first, I'd like to test out some of my newly learned techniques. Then we can go back to the endless arena. You're leaving already? Refined Obsidian Dragon asked, seemingly reluctant to see him go. Yes. I want to prepare myself as much as possible for the Dragon God Festival. Then, if you ever need to craft something in the future, my workshop will always be available for you. As for the remaining materials, you can take them with you. Are you sure? Yuan asked. Had only intended to use some of them. I'm sure. Although it was short, I have learned a lot about blacksmithing from watching you, and I don't want to feel like I'd stolen your techniques. I allowed you to watch because I wanted you to learn from it, but if you're willing to give me all of these wonderful materials, I won't refuse. With a wave of his sleeve, Yuan gathered all of the materials and tossed them inside his spatial ring. Thanks again. Long Yeyou brought Yuan and Yingzi to the endless arena shortly later with a teleport stone. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1679 Boots of Swift Destruction. Chapter 1679 Boots of Swift Destruction. After returning to the endless arena, Yuan immediately started testing his new equipment and techniques. First up, let's try out my new equipment. Yuan looked at Long Yeyou and said, throw some attacks my way. How many? As many as you want. Long Yeyou nodded and started attacking Yuan with techniques weaker than his dragon's breath. Since these attacks weren't threatening enough, Yuan just allowed them to land on his body. The robes of destruction increased his physical defense by 100,000%, and what would have severely damaged him before barely hurt him now. I'm going to attack now, Yuan suddenly warned. Once Yuan had accumulated enough damage, he activated Dragon of Destruction's ultimate chaos, unleashing a ball of concentrated power at Long Yeyou. Long Yejun's eyes widened slightly when a ball of mass destruction that was 10 times more powerful than all of his attacks combined flew at him. Of course, even if the Dragon of Destruction's ultimate chaos could strengthen the attacks 1,000 times, it would not be enough to harm a hair on Long Yeyou, who only attacked Yuan with Divine Lord level attacks while being as powerful as a God Ascension cultivator. Was that your robe's ability? Long Yeyou asked afterward. That attack resembled one of the Dragon of Destruction's techniques. Yuan nodded, confirming his suspicions. So you can draw out the power of the Dragon of Destruction in such a manner? How interesting. Long Yeyou muttered as he learned something new. Okay, now attack me with the intent to kill me. Yuan suddenly said. Do that Dragon's Breath attack on me, but make it stronger than last time. Are you serious? Long Yejun's eyes widened with surprise. Don't worry, I won't die. If you say so. Don't blame me if anything happens. Long Yeyou immediately began preparing for a dragon's breath. A few moments later he released it. A dragon's breath that was twice as powerful as the last one flew at Yuan, who merely stood there with a calm smile on his face. A black barrier enveloped Yuan's entire body. When the dragon's breath connected with the barrier, it was immediately absorbed by the barrier like a black hole. Seeing this, Long Yeyou continued to release dragon's breath. Long Yeyou closed his mouth after 7 full seconds. Wow, you really escaped that unscathed. Is that also the robe's ability? Yuan nodded. But I can only use it once a month. That's amazing. You basically have an extra life every month. Yuan tested the boots of swift destruction next. He tested sky-sundering steps first. When he activated the technique, Yuan transformed into a streak of golden lightning as he traversed around the arena at the speed of light. However, his spiritual energy was also being drained at lightning speed. Even with how rapidly he could restore his spiritual energy, Yuan could only maintain sky-sundering steps for a full minute before he was completely exhausted. Even if it's only for a minute for now, I can travel an immense distance in that minute, and if I use it wisely, I can maintain it for much longer. After recovering enough spiritual energy, Yuan began testing lightning strides. Every time he activated lightning strides, he would instantly travel tens of thousands of meters, up to 100,000 meters. It's basically short-distance teleporting, and it doesn't consume that much spiritual energy either. He looked at Long Yeyou and asked, Do you have any technique that restricts movement? I do. Want me to use it on you? He nodded. All right. Long Yeyou made a grasping motion at Yuan the next moment. Water prison. A barrier of water enveloped Yuan. It didn't directly restrict his movements, so the movement immunity from the boots of swift destruction didn't activate, but it did trap him inside. Once he was fully imprisoned, Yuan activated lightning strikes again. He turned into a streak of lightning that bypassed the water barrier, appearing outside it without any issues. It's not completely teleportation, but it's close. Long Yeyou muttered after seeing this. Sometime later, Yuan said to Long Yeyou, All right, I'm going to attack you with a lightning attack next. Do your worst. Long Yeyou replied with a confident pose and smile. Yuan pointed at him with 2 fingers and activated Heaven's Final Judgment. The sky above Long Yeyou suddenly darkened before swiftly releasing a thick lightning bolt, striking him. At the same time, Yuan felt all of his spiritual energy deplete almost instantly. Meanwhile, Long Yeyou casually swatted the lightning bolt away. It's definitely powerful, even more powerful than your robe's ability, but it didn't completely activate. Long Yeyou commented as his gaze landed on Yuan. Because you lack the cultivation to activate it? Yuan nodded and said, Yes, my cultivation is not enough to use it, but I want to try again. He sat down and cultivated until he fully restored his cultivation. I'm going to do it again now. Once he was prepared, Yuan activated the technique again. However, instead of just using his spiritual energy, he also used the chaotic essence within his chaotic heart. The sky above Long Yeyou darkened again, but it was much more ominous this time. Yuan could feel his spiritual energy and chaotic essence deplete instantly, but miraculously he managed to retain a sliver of chaotic essence. Heaven's Final Judgment. Bang! A massive streak of golden lightning emerged from the black clouds, striking Long Yeyou. Long Yeyou tried to flick it away like last time, but when the lightning struck his arm, it immediately exploded, releasing countless smaller lightning energy. Once the explosion subdued, Long Yeyou looked at his arm. It wasn't bleeding, but he wasn't completely unscathed either, as there was a slight burnt spot where the lightning struck. For you to damage me without my cultivation suppressed, even if it's only to this degree. As impressive as ever, Brother Yuan? Long Yeyou laughed out loud. Chapter 1680 Infinite Spiraling Abyss. Chapter 1680 Infinite Spiraling Abyss. With that said, it is clear that you still lack the cultivation to truly utilize its true power. Long Yeyou said as the wound on his arm quickly healed. Yes, that feels like a fraction of its true potential. Unfortunately, that was the best I can do with my cultivation. Yuan sighed, but he wasn't discouraged. If anything, he was excited for the future when his cultivation was sufficient enough to call down the true heaven's final judgment. I guess the technique isn't celestial grade for no reason. He smiled inwardly. Yuan wanted to test Heaven's Bane in the Baneful Abyss, but he felt that it was too dangerous. While his techniques may not affect Long Yeyou, poison was a different story, especially when it's one of the strongest poison in the world. There is a good chance that the poison won't affect him, but there's no reason to risk it just to satisfy my curiosity. I can test it later on people who really deserve it. As for primordial fire, let's not reveal too much just in case. With that decided, Yuan ended his testing there. Alright, I am done here, he said a moment later. So, which training ground will you attempt to conquer next? Yuan began pondering. Had already conquered the three biggest and most useful elements out there: fire, lightning, and poison. His lightning immunity made him unaffected by even heavenly tribulations. His poison immunity made it impossible to assassinate or poison him. As for his fire immunity, the fire element was one of the most widely used elements in the cultivation world. After pondering for some time, Yuan smiled and said, I want to try my hands at the infinite spiraling abyss. Long Yejun's eyes widened as he hastily exclaimed, No, you don't. The infinite spiraling abyss is arguably the most dangerous training ground in the Divine Dragon, in the entire primal expanse. Yuan was surprised by his reaction and asked, For you to react like this, is this place really that dangerous? You have no idea. Only those who have a good understanding of the power of the void should think of training there. Even if you're an expert, a single mistake and you'll instantly be consumed by the infinite spiraling abyss and never return. The power of the void, simply put, was the power to control space itself. If one could master this ability, one would have the freedom to traverse anywhere in the world. This power was incredibly potent and filled with infinite possibilities, but it was also the most difficult and dangerous to cultivate, with countless casualties just trying to understand the surface of it. Hence, only a handful of cultivators dare to pursue it, and most of them do so after becoming powerful immortals. However, even to this day, not a single cultivator has ever mastered the power of the void. I am well aware of how dangerous the power of the void is. Yuan sighed inwardly. After all, not a single of my previous incarnations had any understanding of it despite being peak figures in their era, at least as far as I am aware. However, to be fair, none of them had tried to understand the power of the void, as the very concept itself was nearly non-existent, and they were busy pursuing other paths. Don't worry, I understand how dangerous the power of the void is, and I am not going to directly challenge the infinite spiraling abyss. I am going to study it from the outside and try to understand it first. I see. If you're only going to study it from the outside, I guess it'll be fine. Long Yejun mumbled. A few days later they arrived at the infinite spiraling abyss, located inside a massive crack in the ground, its depths disappearing into darkness. Unlike the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation, this place was completely empty. So this is the infinite spiraling abyss. Despite being miles away, Yuan could feel a vacuuming force emanating from the crack, as if it were trying to pull him into its endless depths. Be careful or you'll get sucked inside. Long Yejun warned him. He'll be right back. Before Yuan started his training, he logged off and wrote a note to the others in case he lost track of the time again. Since the Eternal Lotuses no longer needed his help with the spiritual bath, Yuan could spend more time in cultivation online without logging off. Once he returned to the primal expanse, Yuan immediately began trying to understand the power of the void. As Yuan became focused, Long Yejun looked at him and wondered, will he actually understand the power of the void like this? He didn't mention it to Yuan because he wanted to see what Yuan was capable of, but there was another training ground in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for those who wanted to understand the power of the void, and it was a much easier place specifically for beginners like Yuan. The infinite spiraling abyss was meant for experts, those who already have a good understanding of the power of the void. The others told me to contact them if Brother Yuan visits another training ground, but this place is dangerous, and the fewer distractions there are, the better. Trying to understand the power of the void was no joke, even for powerful beings like dragons. In the entire primal expanse, the number of beings who had fully grasped the understanding of the power of the void was fewer than 10, and this referred solely to the comprehension of its nature, not the ability to wield the power itself. Besides the primal monarch, dragon god, and primordial phoenix, I cannot imagine another being capable of wielding the power of the void. Not even the abyssal dragon, who is known as the void dragon monarch, could wield such power to its full potential. As Yuan stared into the infinite spiraling abyss, he gradually fell into a trance, much like the state he experienced when he first comprehended Dragon's gaze. Chapter 1681 Gathering of the Seven Dragon Monarchs. Chapter 1681 Gathering of the Seven Dragon Monarchs. Power of the Void. What a profound and mysterious concept. Yuan pondered as he gazed into the infinite spiraling abyss. It's like a branch that endlessly spreads out, extending into countless possibilities. The more Yuan tried to comprehend the power of the void, the more overwhelming it felt, almost as if had been tossed inside the void itself. Long Yeyou and Yingzi silently watched him from a distance while ensuring that he didn't accidentally fall into the infinite spiraling abyss. What is that profound and mysterious feeling that surrounds him? I've never felt anything like that before. Long Yeyou wondered to himself as Yuan's aura gradually began to change. After a few days, Yuan began showing signs of entering enlightenment. However, the concept of enlightenment did not exist within the primal expanse. As a matter of fact, beings in the primal expanse are incapable of entering enlightenment. The reason remains unknown because nobody knew of its existence in the first place. What a mysterious aura. Yingzi was immediately drawn to the aura Yuan was emitting due to his enlightenment, and she subconsciously approached him. However, Long Yeyou snapped her out of it and said, "You can't disturb him now. I don't know why, but I am getting this feeling that it'd be dangerous to disturb him now." Yingzi nodded and moved further away from Yuan so she couldn't disturb him. As time passed, the profound aura surrounding Yuan grew stronger and stronger until it reached the point where even other beings from far away could vaguely sense it. When Long Yeyou noticed several presences approaching their direction, he immediately set up a barrier around Yuan and the infinite spiraling abyss. Then, using sound transmission, he commanded the approaching presence to leave. As the second dragon god's descendant, I, Long Yeyou, command you to leave and stay away from this place for the rest of the year. When those approaching heard Long Yejun's voice and command, they instantly halted, silently bowed in their direction, and turned around, swiftly leaving. However, Yuan's aura of enlightenment continued to grow stronger, much stronger than ever. My concealment barrier isn't able to stop his aura from spreading even though it could completely hide our presence? What an extraordinary aura. Long Yeyou was inwardly shocked, but he didn't have much time to think about such things. I will be busy asking people to leave, he smiled inwardly. Now that I think about it, I've done things for Brother Yuan I wouldn't bother for my other two siblings. What's so different about him? Long Yeyou realized that he had been helping Yuan to the best of his abilities without expecting anything in return, something quite unlike his usual self. Yet, despite this change, it felt as natural as breathing for him to help Yuan. He's humble and pleasant to have around, unlike the other two who are always trying to get on my nerves. Is this what it feels like to have a younger brother? As Yuan's enlightenment deepened, so did his progress in comprehending the power of the void. A few days later, Yuan's aura of enlightenment grew so intense that it spread throughout the entire Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Fortunately, word of Long Yejun's order forbidding anyone from approaching had also circulated, so few dared to get too close. Most onlookers observed from a distance, respecting the boundary set around Yuan. Of course, a few individuals still approached, mainly the Dragon Monarchs and the third Dragon God's descendant, Long Meihui. You're so mean, elder brother. You said you'd contact us the moment junior brother Yuan visits another training ground. Long Meihui stared at him with her cheeks puffed angrily. I didn't say anything because I didn't want any distractions near brother Yuan. I hope you understand, he explained. The infinite spiraling abyss. Even I could have never imagined he'd come here after conquering my playground. The sky-splitting dragon said. Ah. I'd expect nothing less from the monster who conquered my poison swamp. Baneful Dragon laughed out loud. You've changed, Prince Yeyou. I never thought you'd be this caring toward another being. A new face said, his body naturally exuding intense heat. What do you know, Hellfire Dragon? Long Yeyou sneered. The Hellfire Dragon, also known as the Fire Dragon Monarch, was a beautiful woman with long black hair and fiery eyes. As expected of Master Yuan, he's as brilliant as ever. Refined Obsidian Dragon sighed out loud, his gaze filled with admiration. The fourth Dragon God's descendant. He's just a beginner. Why did you allow him to cultivate here? Another new face said. He was a middle-aged man with long wavy black hair and pitch-black eyes. You're here too, Abyssal Dragon? The Abyssal Dragon was the Void Dragon Monarch. Who wouldn't want to investigate that weird aura? I came here as soon as I sensed it, said another new face, the last of the seven dragon monarchs, the Ice Dragon Monarch, Eternal Frost Dragon. She was a young lady with short white and light blue hair and silver eyes. Well, elder sister isn't here. Long Meihui said. How odd. There's no way she wouldn't make an appearance during such a commotion. In fact, I'd expected her to be the first one to show up too. Abyssal Dragon said. She's probably too busy training to notice. Eternal Frost Dragon shrugged. No way. Even if she's deep asleep, this weird aura would have instantly woken her up. Long Yejuan shook his head. Meanwhile, the onlookers were abuzz with excitement as they witnessed all 7 of the 7 dragon monarchs gathered in one place, a sight so rare that it left everyone in awe. Maybe the unrivaled tyrant died without anyone knowing? The baneful dragon suddenly suggested. Ah, great joke. Even if everyone were to suddenly die in the primal expanse, she'd still be alive and kicking. Sky-splitting dragon laughed out loud. Yeah, no way she'd die. What could possibly kill her when even the dragon god failed to do so? Hellfire dragon shook her head. Chapter 1682 Basic Void Understanding. Chapter 1682 Basic Void Understanding. 1 month, 2 months. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Yuan remained fixated on the infinite spiraling abyss, his eyes staring into the darkness in a dazed manner. Ding. Basic Void Understanding. Description. You grasp the fundamentals of the power of the void, allowing you to manipulate the void to a minor extent. Void Manipulation. Grade, Mythic, Mastery Level 1. Description. Allows you to manipulate the void to a certain extent. After acquiring the most basic understanding of the void, the infinite spiraling abyss looked entirely different in Yuan's eyes. It no longer seemed out of reach and incomprehensible. Once Yuan was familiar with the power of the void within the infinite spiraling abyss, his progress skyrocketed, and his aura of enlightenment became even stronger. However, despite Yuan's ever-growing understanding, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't getting any closer to the next level. It was as if he had encountered an invisible bottleneck, and this feeling lingered for an entire month. Suddenly, as if possessed by a ghost, Yuan suddenly began flying toward the infinite spiraling abyss, shocking everyone there. Brother Yuan. What are you doing? Long Yejuan exclaimed with a bewildered expression. However, Yuan had moved with such speed that by the time Long Yejuan processed the situation, had already flown into the infinite spiraling abyss. My God! Why did he do that? Long Meihui cried out loud. The abyssal dragon shook his head and sighed. How foolish. Had only just reached a basic understanding, yet he dared to challenge the infinite spiraling abyss meant for those who have fully comprehended the power of the void. I had high hopes for him too. Right? How boring. I also had high hopes for him after hearing of his previous feats. I guess had only conquered the last 2 training grounds with luck. Hellfire Dragon casually shrugged. Master Yuan isn't someone who'd take on something he cannot handle. Refined Obsidian Dragon roared. Since when did you become the type to have faith in others, Metal Dragon Monarch? The Eternal Frost Dragon asked him. If you knew Master Yuan's true capabilities, you'd also be revering him. Will he be okay? Yingzi asked Long Yejuan with a worried look on her face. Since their first meeting, this was the only time she didn't have any confidence in Yuan's actions. Long Yejuan clenched his fists and he responded with a deep frown on his face. Unfortunately, even if it's Brother Yuan, I don't think he can escape the infinite spiraling abyss. If anyone can save him, it's the dragon god and possibly my elder sister if he hadn't gone too deep into the void. You only mentioned that he wouldn't be able to escape, but what about his chance of survival? Yingzi asked after noticing this detail. He sighed. While the infinite spiraling abyss is indeed very destructive, I believe Brother Yuan can survive it with his current level of regeneration. However, as he descends deeper into the void, the destructiveness will continue to intensify until it eventually surpasses his regenerative abilities. How about the dragon god? You said he could probably save Yuan. Can we ask for his help? Yingzi said. Good luck with that. Hellfire Dragon sneered. The dragon god will only show himself during the Dragon God Festival or when he needs something. Since we're so close to the Dragon God Festival, he probably won't appear until the very last second, right before the festival begins. I can try looking for him, but it'll take so long that it's better just to wait for him to show up during the Dragon God Festival. Long Yejuan sighed. No way. Yingzi wore a sorrowful look on her face. What about elder sister? Long Meihui asked. She's even harder to find than the dragon god. Unless you're fated to meet her, you'll never find her. Long Yeyou sighed. He continued, we can only hope Brother Yuan survives long enough for the dragon god to show up. Meanwhile, somewhere in the infinite expanse, two individuals had been quietly observing the events unfolding at the infinite spiraling abyss since the very beginning, their expressions calm yet alert. A handsome man with long beautiful golden hair glanced at the young child hovering beside him and spoke, "Are you sure you don't want to save him? He's your son, isn't he? Weren't you prepared to kill him for faking his identity as your descendant just some time ago? Why are you suddenly worried about his well-being?" The primal monarch inquired with a nonchalant expression on his face. The handsome man, who was known as the dragon god, smiled, "I was, until he showed the qualifications to become a genuine descendant of mine. I can save him right now, but then I'll take him off your hands." "What kind of nonsense is that?" Primal monarch shook his head and continued, "Also, even if you want him, does he want to be your son? You're just a slightly stronger dragon than the rest." Ha ha ha. The dragon god suddenly burst out laughing, his laughter powerful enough to shake the void around them. He stopped a moment later and said, "Did I just receive your permission to save him? Whether he wants to become my son or not, we can deal with that afterward." The primal monarch sighed, "Do you really think he needs your help?" The dragon god stared at the infinite spiraling abyss and sneered, "Whatever." Meanwhile, after entering the infinite spiraling abyss, Yuan found himself in a pitch-black world that seemed to spiral endlessly around him as he continued to fall deeper into the void. His body was also constantly being damaged. While it wasn't enough to threaten his life, he could feel the intensity of the damage gradually increasing, becoming stronger with every passing moment. Chapter 1683 Leaving the Infinite Spiraling Abyss. Chapter 1683 Leaving the Infinite Spiraling Abyss. Although Yuan's consciousness was awake, he was not fully aware or in control, akin to a state of sleep paralysis, where he was conscious of his surroundings but unable to move or react. As the void continuously damaged him, his body felt like it was slowly being chipped away by countless ants. It wasn't too painful, but the gnarly sensation would drive most people mad if they had to endure it for an extended time. Time felt incredibly slow inside the infinite spiraling abyss, almost as if it were frozen. However, what felt like minutes to Yuan was actually days outside the void, and 2 full months had passed since he entered the infinite spiraling abyss. During this time, Yuan's comprehension of the power of the void continued to progress. Despite the constant pain throughout his body that grew more intensive as time passed, it wasn't able to disturb Yuan from his enlightenment. If anything, it sped up his cultivation, as every time the void inflicted damage on his body, he would absorb some of that damage, refining it into his own power. It has been 6 months since Yuan started training at the infinite spiraling abyss. As the Dragon God Festival drew near, more and more guests showed up at the Divine Dragon Sanctuary to participate or cheer on the participants. However, these new guests were puzzled to find the Divine Dragon Sanctuary nearly empty. Typically, the sanctuary would be bustling with activity, filled with countless beings, but this time it was eerily quiet. Apparently, everyone went to the infinite spiraling abyss. What is going on there? No idea. I heard the 7 dragon monarchs are also there. Seriously? Let's check it out. At the infinite spiraling abyss, Long Yeyou sighed, there's less than half a year before the Dragon God Festival begins. Hang in there, brother Yuan. Another 2 months have passed since Yuan entered the infinite spiraling abyss. Inside, Yuan was still half-conscious, and the void's strength has become so much that his regeneration could no longer keep up with it. However, it was just slightly below the rate his body was being destroyed, so his body was slowly being chipped away. As of this moment, Yuan's body was a mess. His limbs were missing and only his head and upper body remained. Yuning tried to wake him up, but no matter how much she called for him, there was no response. After another month, only Yuan's head remained. How long has it been? Am I going to die here? If I die here and return to the 9 heavens, what about Feng? Would I be leaving her behind? Unfortunately, even after his void understanding had reached the next level, Yuan's condition remained unchanged as had fallen too deep inside the void. However, Yuan suddenly sensed another presence nearby. What a powerful, almost tyrannical presence. Is that old booger finally here to save me? Yuan wondered as the presence approached him. My, what do we have here? A human inside the infinite spiraling abyss? A small silhouette stopped before Yuan, her gaze staring at Yuan's handsome face with interest. Yuan's transformation had been undone shortly after he entered the void, so he was in his human form at this moment. You've only just achieved moderate void understanding, yet you dare to enter the infinite spiraling abyss. I have never seen a being as reckless as you. But what is this weird aura you're emitting? However, Yuan couldn't respond. Seeing Yuan was unresponsive, the silhouette tapped his forehead with a finger. The next moment, the void ceased to attack him, and his body instantly regenerated fully. His connection with the void had been severed, blocked by the barrier the silhouette had cast around him, and his enlightenment also ended shortly after. Once had regained control over his body, Yuan looked at the silhouette and said, "Thank you for saving me. You must be the first dragon god's descendant, the unrivaled Tyrant." "Oh, you recognize me?" Yuan nodded. "Long Yeyou spoke of you before. He said I'd instantly recognize you the moment I saw you. Truly, your presence is something else." The unrivaled Tyrant's presence was unfathomably profound and chaotic, so much so that even the void around them was being affected by it. Yuan examined the unrivaled Tyrant's appearance. She had a petite figure and a somewhat skinny body, with short black hair that ended at her shoulders, a refined face and sharp eyebrows that gave her a naturally fierce expression. At a glance, she looked like an ordinary pretty little girl, but once her dark red eyes locked onto you, it felt like you were being preyed on by a bloodthirsty monster. "Oh, my name is Yuan." Yuan introduced himself. "I'm Long Wuxia, eldest of the dragon god's descendants. How long have you been living in the primal expanse?" "Not long. I've only been here for about 3 years." Long Wuxia narrowed her eyes and said, "Are you lying to me?" "Why would I do that?" Yuan quickly refuted. "You've just arrived in the primal expanse, yet you already have a completed chaotic heart? How do you explain that? Also, I didn't know humans were capable of having chaotic hearts. I guess you can say I'm a special case. My father is the primal monarch after all." Long Wuxia's eyes widened after hearing his words. "The primal monarch is your father?" "Well, he's not my real father. I was adopted by him." "I see. In any case, I have a lot to ask you, but we can continue our chat later. The Dragon God Festival is about to begin, so I will take my leave now. Do you wish to come with me or continue training here?" "Honestly, I'm trapped in here, so I'd appreciate it if you can take me with you." Long Wuxia nodded and brought him along as she traversed the void. "She's a pretty nice person. I wonder why Long Yeyou made her seem like some unreasonable monster." Yuan thought to himself. I cannot wait to get back and have a feast. I have been training here for the last 100 million years." Long Wuxia suddenly muttered out loud. Yuan looked at her and said, "I happen to have some food with me. Do you want some?" "I am a very picky eater," she said. Yuan didn't say another word and directly retrieved several meat skewers for her. Long Wuxia's body trembled the moment she noticed their savory aroma. "Let me see those," she hastily said in a demanding tone. Yuan handed them to her. Once the skewers were in her hand, Long Wuxia examined them for several minutes before putting them in her mouth. "I have traversed nearly the entirety of Primal Expanse and savored all kinds of beings, but nothing comes close to this." After her fist bite, Long Wuxia wouldn't stop until all of the meat skewers were gone. The skewers included. "Did you bring that food from the human world?" she asked afterward. "That's right. Do you have any more?" "Of course." Yuan didn't hesitate to grab another handful of meat skewers for her. "She did save my life after all." He smiled inwardly. "Do you have more?" Long Wuxia asked again a few minutes later. "Here you go." Yuan continued taking out meat skewers for her. "You're very different from the other humans I have met," she suddenly said. "They would all cower in fear and soil themselves the moment they see me. Even my siblings are no different." "Have you met a lot of humans?" he asked. "A few hundred of them, I suppose." "Wow, that's a lot." Yuan was surprised by the number. "I have lived a long time after all. However, humans have stopped coming to our world for some time now. Do you know why? Because they're afraid. After all, none of those who have come to this world have ever returned, so people just stop coming." "That makes sense. What about you? Are you sad that you can no longer return to the human world?" "Not at all. I can return whenever I want with the Primal Monarch's help, but I am staying here for reasons. Once I win the Dragon God Festival, I will return." "Ha ha ha." Long Wuxia suddenly burst out laughing. "You actually dare to claim you'll win the Dragon God Festival right before me? How bold. So, you think you can defeat me?" She looked at him with an excited face, but her aura was oozing with bloodlust. Despite her threatening aura, Yuan faced her and spoke calmly, "Depending on the conditions, yes I can." Long Qing stared at him in silence for a moment before turning away, but she didn't say anything. A few more minutes of awkward silence later, they emerged from the infinite spiraling abyss, shocking everyone there. "Brother Yuan. He's actually managed to escape," Long Yeyou exclaimed in an excited voice. Then he noticed Yuan had emerged with a different appearance, and even his scent had changed. However, before he could even think about it, his entire body trembled as Long Qing's tyrannical aura permeated throughout the entire place. The unrivaled tyrant? The dragon monarchs and onlookers exclaimed with shocked faces after noticing her presence, their very souls trembling in immense fear. Chapter 1684 Unrivaled Tyrant? Chapter 1684 Unrivaled Tyrant. My, what's going on here? I have never had such a massive crowd to welcome me back before. Long Qing spoke with a slight smile on her face when she noticed the 7 dragon monarchs and the onlookers outside the infinite spiraling abyss. It's the unrivaled tyrant. Run for your lives. The onlookers began scrambling in fear, resembling a group of startled cats, their escape messy and swift. The only ones who didn't attempt to escape were the 7 dragon monarchs, primarily because fleeing would make them appear weak, a vulnerability that would only invite further bullying and challenges to their authority. What is this weird scent coming from the 4th dragon god's descendant? Eternal Frost Dragon suddenly mused out loud. Since he was in his human form, Yuan's human scent swiftly permeated the area. It was so intense that it even halted some of the onlookers running away. However, once they realized the scent was coming from the unrivaled tyrant's direction, they began running again. This scent is the scent of a human. Long Yijin's eyes widened as he stared at Yuan, who now had black hair. No way. Why does Brother Yuan have the scent of a human on him? What happened inside the infinite spiraling abyss? He didn't immediately entertain the possibility that Yuan had been human all along. Instead, he assumed that something within the infinite spiraling abyss had triggered this puzzling transformation. After all, there was simply no way a human could have the dragon god's blood. Yingzi wore a nervous look on her face after realizing that Yuan's identity had been exposed, but there was nothing she could do there. Even if she wanted to take Yuan and escape from the divine dragon sanctuary, she knew it was impossible to escape with the 7 dragon monarchs so close. Moreover, with Long Qing beside Yuan, she would kill Yingzi before she could even reach him. The only thing I can do now is hope for the primal monarch to help us, she sighed inwardly. Thank you for your help, Senior Long, Yuan said to Long Qing after coming out of the infinite spiraling abyss. You can just call me Qing. I permit you to do so, she casually said. Anyway, I need to stretch myself. I'll talk to you again afterward. When the 7 dragon monarchs heard her words, their faces darkened, and they simultaneously released their cultivation, shocking Yuan. What are they? Before he could even finish his sentence, Long Qing turned to look at them with a murderous smile on her face. Let me see how much you've all grown, she laughed as she flew at them. This crazy bitch. The Dragon God Festival is right around the corner, and she wants to fight now. Hellfire Dragon exclaimed. Elder sister. Please wait a moment. Long Yeyou shouted with a begging expression. Damn it. Why is she always like this? Sky-splitting dragon cried out loud. I shouldn't have come here. Refined Obsidian Dragon sighed. Have mercy on me. Long Meihui shed a tear. She wasn't one of the 7 dragon monarchs, but she was still a target. The 7 dragon monarchs attacked the incoming Long Qing with the intent to kill her. Boom. A powerful ripple swept the divine dragon sanctuary when Long Qing collided with the 7 dragon monarchs. Yingzi had instinctively escaped the moment Long Qing looked in her direction, and she barely made it in time, or she would have been caught up in their confrontation. Yuan was swept away like a pebble during a storm at first, but he quickly stabilized himself. A massive cloud of smoke hovered in the air, concealing the figures of the 7 dragon monarchs and Long Qing within its dense, swirling mist. Moments later, several silhouettes could be seen coming out of the smoke. To be more precise, they appeared to have been tossed out, and their appearance was a mess with blood all over their bodies. Amongst these silhouettes were the refined Obsidian Dragon, Eternal Frost Dragon, Long Meihui, and the Baneful Dragon. After a few more moments, the cloud of smoke was forcefully removed when another powerful blast occurred, revealing Long Yeyou, the Abyssal Dragon, Sky-Splitting Dragon, and Hellfire Dragon's figure. However, they were all beaten up and dripping with blood, looking as if they had been run through by several trucks. Long Qing was also there, but she didn't have a single scratch on her body. As Long Wuqing hovered in the air, exuding an aura of confidence and superiority, she sighed and remarked, "What have you lot been doing for the last 100 million years? Lying on your backs all day?" She looked at Long Yeyou and continued, "I am especially disappointed in you, little brother. I thought you would be able to last a little longer this time, but alas, you've barely improved since we last fought." That's nonsense. I have improved a lot. You're just a damn monster who outpaces all of us significantly, so no matter how much we train, you'll always be several steps ahead of us. Long Yeyou refuted, his voice full of frustration. What did you just call me?" Long Wuqing's eyebrows twitched. Long Yejun's body shivered, realizing that had misspoke. Long Wuqing moved again, but she only targeted Long Yeyou this time, beating him left and right. Long Yeyou tried to fight back, but their disparity was simply too vast. "Wuqing, can you stop beating him?" A voice suddenly spoke, halting her movements. Long Wuqing turned to look at Yuan, who continued speaking. "He's been nothing but a good friend to me ever since I arrived, and I cannot bear to see him in such a state. If you want to stretch, how about doing it with me? I would appreciate it if you can suppress your cultivation to match mine, or I'll die from a single punch from you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc." Chapter 1685 Sworn Brothers. Chapter 1685 Sworn Brothers. A deafening silence filled the area for a good moment after Yuan spoke, with the 7 dragon monarchs staring at him with wide eyes filled with disbelief. "I like your enthusiasm, Yuan, but I don't want to injure you before the Dragon God Festival. After all, I don't want to hear any excuses when you lose to me," said Long Wuqing. Her words shocked the others more than Yuan's words. "That crazy bitch is declining a fight. I didn't know she was even capable of that." Hellfire Dragon cried inwardly. "But I can't bear to watch you beat my friend any longer." Yuan sighed. Long Wuqing glanced at Long Yeyou for a brief moment before releasing him. "Consider yourself lucky, little brother." She approached Yuan and continued, "Don't think we won't fight. Well, do it the moment the Dragon God Festival is over. I am looking forward to it." Long Wuqing left the scene shortly after. "I didn't want to show you such a pathetic sight, brother Yuan." Long Yeyou approached him a moment later. Despite his resilient body, the wounds caused by Long Wuqing didn't recover normally, as if there was something preventing him from healing. The same could be said for the others too. "Don't say that." Yuan shook his head. "I can't believe you came out of the infinite spiraling abyss with her. My heart stopped for a second back there. She saved my life." "How unexpected," Long Yeyou mumbled. "By the way, what happened to you inside the infinite spiraling abyss? Why do you smell like a human now?" Oh. It was at this moment that Yuan realized he forgot to transform back to his dragon form. However, considering that his true identity has been revealed to Long Wuqing, it would only be a matter of time before it was revealed to everyone else. "Actually, I am human." Yuan decided to reveal his true identity. "What?" Long Yejun's eyes widened with immense shock. "I apologize for deceiving you until now, but I am not one of Dragon God's descendants." "Why would you?" "I have my reasons." He sighed. Long Yeyou lowered his head and fell silent, seemingly in deep thoughts. "I see, so you were human from the start." When Long Yeyou lifted his head and showed his expression again, it was filled with excitement and admiration. "I can't believe a human has conquered the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp, the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation, and even survived the infinite spiraling abyss. Ah." He laughed so hard tears began forming in his eyes. "Hey, although we're not real brothers, can I still call you brother? I've grown accustomed to it and it wouldn't feel right if I changed it now." Yuan nodded, "Of course." The realization that Yuan was a human began to set in for the others, their faces filled with shock, some with disdain. Master Yuan is a human? That explains his godlike smithing techniques. The art of smithing was originally humans to begin with. Refined Obsidian Dragon muttered to himself. "A human? A human conquered my playground?" The baneful dragon wore a look of disbelief on his face. The sky-splitting dragon had a similar reaction. Long Meihui's eyes were sparkling with admiration. The Hellfire Dragon and Eternal Frost Dragon glared at Yuan with disdain in their eyes. The Abyssal Dragon remained silent. "Though, I must admit that I am disappointed." Long Yeyou suddenly continued with a weak smile. "You have taught and given me the experience of what it's like to have a little brother. Now I have to face the reality that I might never have a little brother." Although I cannot be your real brother, we can still be brothers. In the human world we have the concept known as sworn brothers. While they are not real brothers, they treat each other as one. What a wonderful concept. Let's be sworn brothers. Yuan nodded with a smile. However, a voice filled with power and authority abruptly resounded. Who said you can't be real brothers? Yuan suddenly sensed a powerful presence behind one that surpassed even Long Wu Qing. However, it wasn't tyrannical and oppressive as hers. Yuan turned around to see a handsome man with long golden hair and golden eyes hovering behind him. Dragon God. Long Yeyou hastily lowered his head after recognizing the man. The others followed suit. Dragon God. Yuan muttered. Indeed. I am your father, or so you claimed. The Dragon God spoke with a smile that appeared threatening to Yuan for some reason. Perhaps it was because of his guilt for taking on the identity as one of the Dragon God's descendants. Father. Please wait. There's a good reason that Brother Yuan. Long Yeyou hastily tried to come up with an excuse, but the Dragon God sealed his lips with a single glance. Brother Yuan, huh? It sure has a nice ring to it. The Dragon God chuckled. Relax, I am not cruel enough to punish you for pretending to be my descendant, he continued. Oh really? Suddenly, another figure appeared beside the Dragon God. None of those present except for Yuan and Yingzi recognized him. However, they were bewildered that this young man could stand beside the Dragon God as an equal. No, he is standing even above the Dragon God. Long Yeyou noticed this. You're not going to tell him that if I hadn't stopped you, you would have killed him? You dwell too much on the insignificant details, Primal Monarch. The Dragon God shook his head. The Primal Monarch? Long Yeyou and the others exclaimed in shock. We greet the Primal Monarch. They hastily greeted him in a messy fashion. You finally decided to show yourself, you old booger. Long Yeyou and the others stared at Yuan with terrified expressions. Be Brother Yuan. That's. Long Yeyou tried to warn him, but Yuan interrupted with a smile. Don't worry, he's my old man, my father. Why your father? Long Yeyou looked speechless. Yes. Yuan confirmed. Chapter 1686 A Feast Before the Festival? Chapter 1686 A Feast Before the Festival? Did you want me to save you sooner? I knew there was someone inside that was capable of saving you, so why would I waste my energy? The Primal Monarch shrugged with a smile on his face after hearing Yuan's words. What if she didn't save me? He asked. But that didn't happen, so why dwell on it? Yuan sighed and no longer tried to argue with him. Ahem. The Dragon God cleared his throat. As I was saying. If you want to become my descendant, I will make it possible. You were serious? Yuan looked at him with wide eyes. Of course. Do you want me to show you how serious I am? Hey, why are you trying to poach him when you didn't even save him? Primal Monarch suddenly asked. My daughter saved him, which is the same thing. Dragon God shrugged. I can't believe such shameless words are coming out of that mouth. Did you hit your head too hard recently? Long Yeyou and the others were bewildered by the Dragon God and Primal Monarch's childish bickering, as they had never seen such behavior from these godlike existences. Since when were they on such good terms with each other? Long Yeyou wondered inwardly. Once it seemed like their conversation had ended, Yuan spoke. I don't know how you'll make me a descendant and I appreciate the offer, but I will have to decline. After all, I already have a father here. Primal Monarch snickered after hearing this. The Dragon God's expression didn't change much and he appeared calm, but he was definitely disappointed inwardly. What a pity. With your talents you definitely qualify to be my descendant. But if you don't want it, I can't force you. The Dragon God Festival will begin soon, so I will take my leave now. Until then. The Dragon God disappeared into thin air the very next moment. He'll also take my leave for now. The Primal Monarch left before Yuan could say anything to him. The place remained dead silent even many moments later. Eventually, Long Yeyou broke the silence and spoke in a trembling voice. I can't believe you're the Primal Monarch's descendant. That's actually even more impressive than being the Dragon God's descendant. Well, I am not really his blood-related descendant. I was adopted by him and he gave his blood essence to me. Yuan explained. The Primal Monarch's blood essence. That's even more impressive. Long Yeyou cried out loud. He continued, anyway, what are you going to do now? Since we still have a little time left before the Dragon God Festival, want to have a feast? Yuan nodded and said, sure, but I will be away for a little. No worries. We need a few days to prepare the feast anyway. Long Yeyou nodded. Yuan looked at Yingzi and said to her, "He'll be gone for a bit again." "Okay." Yuan logged off at that moment. "Huh. Where did he go?" the baneful dragon muttered in a dazed voice. "I can't sense his presence anymore, almost as if he ceased to exist. Was that the power of the void?" Long Meihui inquired out loud, her face filled with wonder. "The primal monarch probably took him somewhere," Eternal Frost Dragon deducted. Meanwhile, Yuan returned to Earth again. He looked at the two sleeping beauties beside him and sighed. "I'd just promised them that I'd not lose track of time, but alas, it's almost been a year since my last return." Although he didn't technically lose track of time but was trapped inside the infinite spiraling abyss, it was basically the same thing. Yuan waited for either Meishio or Yuxiang to wake up. The following day, Meishio was the first to wake up. She and Yuxiang had been taking turns logging off every other day to see if Yuan had returned. "Ichem, you're back?" Meishio looked at him with a pleasantly surprised face. "Yes." Upon seeing his apologetic smile, Meishio instantly knew he was about to apologize for his absence again, so she swiftly placed a finger on his lips and said, "You don't need to apologize. We were prepared for it when you left a note this time." Yuan nodded and said, "All right, I won't apologize, but I want to tell you what happened this time." "Of course." Yuan proceeded to explain about being trapped inside the infinite spiraling abyss and how time flowed differently inside. "It felt like I had only been there for several minutes, but by the time I came out, several months had passed," he said. "Anyway, the Dragon God Festival is right around the corner. Once I finish it and hopefully win it, he'll immediately return to the 9 heavens." "What will happen if you don't win?" Meishio entertained this possibility and inquired. "Then he'll have to ask the Primal Monarch for help. If he can't help Feng, he'll just have to postpone her revival and return to the 9 heavens. Though, I doubt the Primordial Phoenix will accept that outcome. She said that she'd wage war with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for the treasure if I failed, and I cannot allow that to happen no matter what." I don't know how serious she was being when she said it, but I have a feeling she was being dead serious, Yuan sighed. "If I have no other option, I will see if the Dragon God would be willing to lend me the treasure, and in exchange I will become his descendant." "His descendant?" Meishio wore a puzzled look on her face. "Apparently the Dragon God wants me to be his descendant. I don't know what went through his mind that led him to such a decision, though." After chatting for some time, Yuan and Meishio spent the rest of the day together. He did the same thing with Yuxiang the following day. Then he visited Yeyou and the Eternal Lotuses. Once he caught up with everyone, Yuan returned to the Primal Expanse for the feast. Chapter 1687 Seasoning. Chapter 1687 Seasoning. When Yuan returned to the Primal Expanse, Yingzi was there to greet him with a teleport stone given to her by Long Yeyou. Without uttering a word, Yingzi handed the teleport stone to him. After attaining moderate void understanding, Yuan could see the more intricate details within the teleport stone, even able to tell the direction it would take him. He shattered the teleport stone the next moment and entered the rift created by it. When they emerged from the rift, Yuan and Yingzi appeared at the endless arena, but it had a vastly different atmosphere and was no longer as empty as their previous visits. The once empty platform is now filled with human figures and beasts, with mountains of food in every direction. Since Yuan was still in his human form, his scent quickly spread, attracting the attention of those around him. They stared at him in silence for a few moments before someone shouted, "It's the Primal Monarch's descendant." News of Yuan's true identity had long spread throughout the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Some were upset, even angry that they had been deceived by a human, but the majority of them didn't mind it and became more impressed by his feats in the past 2 years. The beings near Yuan respectfully greeted him, regardless of their feelings toward him, as he was the Primal Monarch's descendant, which ranked even above the Dragon God's descendants. "Oh, you've arrived." Long Yeyou appeared shortly after their arrival. "Follow me. They'll bring you to our spot." Yuan and Yingzi followed him to another area where the other Dragon Monarchs were present. However, not all 7 of the Dragon Monarchs were present. Besides the Hellfire Dragon and Eternal Frost Dragon, the rest were there. "Hello everyone. Sorry to make you wait." "It's fine. We just finished setting up the place," Long Yeyou said. "There's still 2 weeks left before the Dragon God Festival. Enjoy yourself until then." Long Yejun's voice rippled throughout the endless arena. Everyone started stuffing their mouths with food the very next moment. Yuan also started eating the food that had been prepared using beings that only existed in the Primal Expanse. Although the food had natural flavors, It lacked any seasoning, so it was very lackluster compared to the food in the human world. Realizing this, Yuan said to them, "You guys like the meat skewers, right? How about I prepare this food in the same way?" "What? You can do that?" Long Yijin's eyes widened. "Please do." Long Meihui exclaimed, her eyes flickering with excitement. Yuan nodded and retrieved several bottles of seasoning. One of the most significant contributors to the excellence of human food is how we apply our seasoning, how we season our food. He showed them the bottles and continued, "We call this seasoning. If we apply it to the food, it will give the food a specific taste. If we mix them together, it will create a unique flavor, and different mixtures have different results." Yuan sprinkled some salt on his food and handed it to Long Yejuan. "This is one of the most commonly used seasonings. Salt." When Long Yejuan bit into the meat, his eyes widened with surprise. "What the? This food is now several times tastier. Let me try." Long Meihui and the others shouted. Yuan sprinkled some salt onto their food. "Wow. I can't believe those tiny sand-like things could enhance the flavors so much. This one is called black pepper, another commonly used seasoning." Yuan handed them more food. "What a stark difference. And this is what happens when I mix them together." Yuan added salt, black pepper and garlic powder to the next sample. Long Yejuan and the others trembled with satisfaction when they ate the food. "I used to underestimate humans, but the fact is, they possess knowledge we could never fathom." The baneful dragon muttered. "I've known that since I learned how to blacksmith from one." Refined Obsidian dragon commented. Yuan then said, "By the way, we typically season our food before cooking it. Speaking of cooking, we also learned that from humans. Before we would consume our food raw." Long Yejuan said. Yingzi gently tugged on Yuan's robes and asked, "How about the flavor of meat skewers? What kind of seasoning do you put on them?" Many people have their own special mix, but the majority of them contain cumin, salt and chili. Yuan tried to replicate the seasoning of the meat skewers in his possession and handed them to Yingzi. "It's missing some flavors, but it's very close," she said after tasting it. "There are hundreds of different seasonings out there, but I only have some of them," Yuan said. Yuan took out all of the seasoning in his possession to let the others use them as they pleased. Long Yejuan and the others had a blast testing out every combination, but their peace lasted only for a few minutes. Suddenly, a rift appeared right next to Yuan, and even before the figure emerged, their tyrannical presence poured through the rift, saturating the surroundings with an overwhelming and oppressive force. My, how can you have a feast without me?" Long Wuxia spoke as she walked out of the rift. However, she looked a little different from before. While most of her features remained the same, she was much taller and more mature-looking, resembling that of a peerless woman. "Because we knew you'd show up regardless." Long Yejuan spoke with a nervous smile. Long Wuxia looked at the bottle of salt in his hand and inquired, "What is that white stuff in your hand?" "Seasoning. Humans use them to enhance the flavor of their food." Yuan gave her a brief explanation. "Interesting," she showed a thrilled smile. "Show me how to use it." I don't mind, but can you do something about your presence? It's terrifying everyone," Yuan said. Everyone at the endless arena had instinctively halted their movements since Long Wuqing's appearance and hadn't moved a muscle since then. Some even tried running away, but their bodies were stiff from fear. Chapter 1688 Dragon God Festival Details. Chapter 1688 Dragon God Festival Details. Long Yejuan and the others looked at Long Wuqing with nervous gazes, seemingly waiting for her reaction. Nobody has ever dared to ask her to suppress her presence since she killed the last one who did. In the primal expanse, displaying one's presence was a way of flaunting their status and prowess. The more powerful the presence, the better. To be told to stop, even if it was a reasonable request, could be interpreted as disrespect. It was akin to telling a wealthy man to stop showing off their jewelry in public because they were reflecting the sunlight and bothering those around him. After a long moment of silence, Long Wuqing's tyrannical presence unexpectedly began to weaken until it was barely noticeable. Her oddly obedient behavior greatly shocked everyone there, with some even wondering if she was truly the feared unrivaled tyrant. "There. You happy now, little human?" Long Wuqing glared at Yuan. He nodded and said, "That's perfect. Let me show you how to use the seasoning." After teaching her the basics, Long Wuqing began testing other combinations on her own. Sometime later, she had managed to somewhat replicate the meat skewer's flavor. "Hey, do you have any more seasoning?" "This isn't enough to recreate the taste of those skewers you gave me," she said. "Sorry, but that's all I have right now." "When can you get more?" she inquired. "When I return to the human world, but once I do that, I won't be returning." Long Wuxing fell silent again. "What a pity," she muttered a moment later and continued to eat in silence. "I can't believe it. That tyrant is actually have a peaceful meal with everyone." Long Yeyou swallowed nervously, feeling like he was living a dream. When he pinched himself and sensed pain, Long Yeyou nearly cried tears of joy. As expected of brother Yuan. If anyone can tame that monster, it's him. He glared at Yuan with a profound gaze. Yuan's spine shivered at Long Yejun's gaze. What is this ominous feeling? He wondered inwardly. For the next few days, Yuan and the others continued to feast until all of the food was devoured, leaving not even the bones. Of course, it was the beast who consumed all of the bones. As big as his appetite was, Yuan wouldn't eat bones. 10:46 For the next few days, Yuan and the others continued to feast until all of the food was devoured, leaving not even the bones. Of course, it was the beast who consumed all of the bones. As big as his appetite was, Yuan wouldn't eat bones. Shortly after they finished eating, a powerful presence suddenly appeared in the endless arena, alerting everyone there. "We greet the almighty dragon god." The beings there respectfully greeted upon noticing him. The dragon god remained silent. A few moments later he opened his mouth and spoke, his voice resounding throughout the entire divine dragon sanctuary. "Heed my words. I will be announcing the details for this year's Dragon God Festival." The entire divine sanctuary became dead silent without a single entity making a sound. This year's Dragon God Festival will consist of 3 separate trials, each requiring the completion of the previous to participate. The first trial shall be a one-on-one death match. In order to make things as fair as possible, your cultivation must be suppressed to perfect chaotic commander. Those of you with a lower cultivation will have to deal with the difference if your opponent has a higher cultivation. Once you participate, you will not be able to forfeit. In other words, half of the participants will die. The first trial left everyone speechless. While death was not uncommon during the Dragon God Festival, with many perishing in each event, this trial had been the deadliest to date, and it was only the first of 3 trials. The sheer brutality of it shocked even the most seasoned participants. Why did the Dragon God make such a trial? Long Yejun wondered, his gaze subconsciously shifting toward Yuan. Yuan was only a perfect chaotic master. If he were unlucky with his opponent, he'd need to fight a perfect chaotic commander in a worst-case scenario. Although the atmosphere remained quiet, a significant portion of the participants had already made the decision to skip this year's Dragon God Festival. Whether it was due to insufficient cultivation or simply an unwillingness to risk their lives, many chose to withdraw rather than face the deadly trial ahead. The Dragon God continued to speak after giving the listeners a moment to think about the first trial. Those of you who survived the death match will be qualified to participate in the second trial. In the second trial, you will be given a blood reservoir containing my blood. If you are able to absorb and refine more than 90% of my blood within 30 days, you will pass the second trial. The Dragon God's blood. Countless beings exclaimed in a shocked voice after hearing the details of the second trial. Even if it wasn't his blood essence, the Dragon God's blood was an invaluable treasure, capable of strengthening bloodlines and even transforming a mere snake into a true dragon. Most beings present would willingly start a war over such a precious resource, let alone risk everything in a one-on-one death match. We only need to pass the first trial to absorb the Dragon God's blood in the second? Even if we only manage to absorb a drop of his blood in the second trial, it's completely worth it. Those who had already decided to skip this year's Dragon God Festival immediately had a change of heart. They have decided to participate even if they had to risk their lives, including those with a lower cultivation. Why is the Dragon God being so generous for this year's Dragon God Festival? No, this is a little too generous. I doubt he'd really let so many people absorb his blood with so little risks. Long Yejun and the 7 dragon monarchs stared at the Dragon God with suspicious faces. The Dragon God suddenly laughed. "You lot sure seem eager to absorb my blood. However, did you think it would be so simple?" "I knew it." Long Yejun cried inwardly after the Dragon God proved his worries to be correct so quickly. Chapter 1689 Dragon God Festival Details 2. Chapter 1689 Dragon God Festival Details 2. The Dragon God continued to speak, The blood reservoir contains exactly 10 drops of my blood, so you will need to absorb and refine at least 9 drops to pass the trial. However, with that said, the blood you'll be absorbing is no ordinary blood. Every single drop has been enhanced, and if you're unable to absorb it, you'll immediately die a violent and explosive death. For example, let's say I only have the potential to absorb 3 drops of blood. If I try to absorb even a single drop more, it will spell the end for me. You may think it'll be fine as long as you stop at your limit, and while that is true, only some of you will have the capability to tell your own limit. The majority of you will not know your limit and will essentially be walking on a thin rope in the void. I will give you a warning. Whether you heed it or not is none of my problem. Many, and I mean many of you here will not even be able to absorb a single drop of my enhanced blood. The dragon god's voice was grim but also felt oddly provocative, as if he was daring them to participate. The second trial was arguably even more dangerous and deadly than the first. While half of the participants would perish in the first trial, there was a good chance that most of the participants would perish in the second trial. As the reality set in for those present, they began to wonder why this year's Dragon God Festival was so dangerous and different from the rest. It was as though the festival had been tailored and fine-tuned for a particular individual. Unbeknownst to those present, the Dragon God had changed the Dragon God Festival at the very last minute. While some speculated that was the case, they had no solid proof, and they were not going to question the Dragon God. Yuan silently stared at the Dragon God. Although the Dragon God wasn't looking at him, he had a weird feeling the Dragon God was somehow paying attention to him. Let's move on to the last trial. The Dragon God continued a few moments later. If you manage to absorb and refine 9 drops of my blood and pass the second trial, you'll be able to participate in the third and final trial, where you will get the opportunity to refine my blood essence. What? Almost everyone there exclaimed in shock, Long Wuxing included. Long Yijin's eyes were so wide that his eyeballs were on the verge of falling out of their sockets. You did not hear me incorrectly. For the third trial, you'll need to refine my blood essence to become this year's champion. Yuan was speechless. He could have never expected the Dragon God to use his own blood essence for a mere festival. However, he wasn't exactly delighted either. While Head managed to refine the Primal Monarch's blood essence, it was mainly because he already had the Immortal Monarch's bloodline. The Dragon God's blood essence was an entirely different story and could outright kill him if he attempted to do so. I still don't dare to consume the Dragon Ancestor's blood essence in my current state, and the Dragon God is most likely even stronger than the Dragon Ancestor. How could I possibly refine his blood essence? It sounds like an impossible task. The only one there who even had a chance to refine the Dragon God's blood essence would be Long Wuxing. However, when Yuan looked at her to see her reaction, her face was full of doubt and worry. So even she's not confident, huh? Yuan shook his head inwardly. That is all. Due to the unnatural nature of this year's Dragon God Festival, I will give you all an extra month to think about it. Until then. The Dragon God disappeared into thin air afterward. Right before the Dragon God left, Yuan noticed the Dragon God giving him a quick glance. The entire Divine Dragon Sanctuary remained silent for a few more moments before commotions erupted in every direction. Holy fuck. This year's Dragon God Festival is fucking bats hit insane. It's as dangerous as it is rewarding. Who is going to participate? Until his warning for the second trial. Nearly everyone was having a conversation about the Dragon God Festival at this moment. Brother Yuan, what do you think? Are you still going to participate? Long Yeyou turned to ask him. The festival turned out to be much more dangerous than I could have ever anticipated. You probably don't want to hear this, but I don't want you to participate. It's too dangerous. This has nothing to do with your talents. Humans are simply unable to absorb the Dragon God's blood, much less the enhanced version. Yuan nodded. I am aware of its danger. We still have a month to decide, but as of this moment, I haven't given up yet. It'd be quite bad if one of us gets paired with each other during the first trial. Sky-Splitting Dragon suddenly commented. Yes. It's incredibly risky and it'll only become riskier with fewer participants. Baneful Dragon responded. As enticing as the trial seems, I won't be participating. Refined Obsidian Dragon had already made up his mind. He was already one of the 7 Dragon Monarchs, and his passion was smithing. He almost has no reason to risk his life at this festival. What about you two, the Dragon God's descendants? Abyssal Dragon looked at Long Yeyou and Long Meihui. He didn't even bother asking Long Wuxing because he already knew her answer. In response, Long Meihui looked at Long Yeyou and Long Wuxing with a worried frown. I'm worried that I might need to fight with my own siblings. Will the dragon god, our father, really be fine with us killing each other for this festival? She wondered out loud. Long Meihui wasn't worried that she had to kill her siblings. If she really fought with Long Yeyou or Long Wuqing, Long Meihui had no chance of surviving. She was worried for her own life. It was as simple as that. Chapter 1690 Yingzi. Chapter 1690 Yingzi. I don't think he'll participate in this year's Dragon God Festival. Long Yeyou spoke after Long Meihui, surprising the others. I can't lie that the rewards aren't enticing, but as mentioned, there's a chance I might fight with my siblings or brother Yuan. I don't think he'll be able to kill them if I matched against them. Long Yeyou could not bear fighting his sworn brother for real, much less kill him. However, since it was a rule in the Dragon God Festival, there was no way to avoid it if he really fought against Yuan. The Dragon God Festival was more than just a festival. It was a sacred ritual, one that even the primal monarch could not interfere with ease. If Long Yeyou and Yuan matched against each other, one of them would need to die, and the Dragon God himself would make sure of it even if it were the last thing he did. Ha! A scornful laugh suddenly resounded. Everyone there turned to look at Long Wuqing, who'd just laughed. She was staring at Long Yejun and said, "Just say you're afraid of being killed by me. This is your only chance to become truly powerful, but you're shying away because of some emotional bullshit. Or do you believe the Dragon God will give us another opportunity like this ever again? I don't think so." Long Yejun clenched his teeth, but he couldn't refute her claims. The chances of a similar Dragon God festival occurring in the future were extremely slim to none. If he were to let go of this opportunity, he would never close the gap between him and Long Wuqing. "If you're worried about killing me, don't." Yuan suddenly chimed in. "If we really matched against each other, I wouldn't hesitate to kill you. Of course, I will also have no qualms if you kill me." "Brother Yuan?" Long Yejun looked at him with wide eyes. Yuan smiled and said, "I told you. I need to get my hands on the sacred chalice of purification no matter what. Being sworn brothers doesn't mean we cannot kill each other. As long as we both agree to it, nothing is off the table." "Brother Yejun, I don't mind if you kill me," Yuan confirmed with a serious expression on his face. After a moment of silence, Long Yejun smiled and said, "I also don't mind if you kill me. Even if I die, it's not like I will be gone forever. Due to my bloodline, I'll eventually be reincarnated. However, if I let go of this opportunity, I will never have a chance like this again." "Then it's settled." Yuan nodded with a smile. Long Yejun turned to look at Long Wuqing and continued, "Don't think you've won already. Well, both have our cultivation suppressed, so even if we fought, it's not like I don't have any chance at all to defeat you." Long Wuqing laughed out loud as if she just heard something unbelievable. What a ridiculous joke. "Even if I suppressed my cultivation to perfect chaotic master, you will never defeat me." Long Wuqing shifted her attention to Yuan and said, "You better not run away, little human. You claimed you'd win the Dragon God Festival. If you dare run away, I'll kill you right here and now." Yuan smiled and said, "Don't worry, I don't have any plans on running." Although he was worried about the second and third trials, he still had to do it for Feng Yuxiang's sake. "No, this is no longer just about Feng. If I lose here, there will be countless casualties from both the Divine Dragon Sanctuary and the Eternal Phoenix Domain," he sighed inwardly. "If he fails to acquire the sacred chalice of purification, the Primordial Phoenix will lead the Eternal Phoenix Domain and raid the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, resulting in countless deaths." "Good, because you seemed hesitant moments ago." Long Wuqing smiled. "I could say the same for you, Wuqing. As if you were just seeing things. Then I'll see you next month." Long Wuqing flew away shortly after. "They'll probably still skip this year's Dragon God Festival." Long Meihui sighed a moment later. "But I'll wait to see how many will be participating. We have a month after all." After saying that, Long Meihui also left. "I'll also leave now." The others left one after another until it was just Long Yejun, Yuan, and Yingzi. "What about you, Yingzi? You going to participate?" Yuan asked her. She immediately shook her head. "I have no interest in this sort of thing," she said. "I see. I'm going to go home and take this time to prepare myself," Long Yejun said a moment later. "You're welcome to join me." Yuan shook his head and said, "It's fine. There's nothing I can do to prepare for the upcoming trials." "Then I'll see you here in a month." Long Yejun disappeared afterward. Now that it was just Yuan and Yingzi, he said to her, "I'm going to leave for a month. Hey, can I come with you?" Yingzi suddenly asked. Come with me? I don't think that's possible, unfortunately. You know this isn't my real body, just a fragment of my soul, right? She nodded. I am returning to my real body now, and I don't think there's a way for you to come with me. Sorry. It's okay, Yingzi said. A split second before Yuan logged off, Yingzi's figure suddenly flickered and disappeared into thin air. When Yuan returned to Earth, he removed his helmet and got off the bed to stretch. Since there's nothing I can do to prepare, I might as well use this time to relax, Yuan mumbled. Let's take a shower first. Just as Yuan turned around to face the bathroom, he was shocked to see a petite figure standing right behind him, her face filled with wonder and excitement. Yingzi? Yuan muttered in a dazed voice, his eyes wide with disbelief. Yes, she calmly responded, confirming that she wasn't his imagination. How in the world? Chapter 1691 Yingzi, 2. Chapter 1691 Yingzi, 2. Yingzi, how did you follow me? Yuan asked her with a dumbfounded expression on his face. I followed your shadow, she calmly responded. My shadow? How much do you know about shadows? She asked him next. Honestly, not much. Yingzi proceeded to explain. Most believe that shadows are universal for everyone. While that is somewhat true, it's different for us, shadow dwellers. Just like how everyone has a different soul, their shadow is also unique to them. However, only those born in the shadows like us shadow dwellers can see the difference. That means as long as I enter your shadow, you'll be able to emerge from your shadow, no matter where that may be. With that said, I wasn't certain I would be able to follow you and I acted on a whim. But I'm glad it worked. This world may be small, but it has a lot of delicious scents. Yuan stared at Yingzi with a worried gaze. While he was confident that Yingzi wouldn't cause any trouble for him or Earth, this incident exposed a loophole, a risk that he wasn't even aware of before. If Yingzi was able to follow him from the primal expanse through her own abilities, there was a chance the same could happen again. This meant that Earth wasn't completely safe from unexpected invasions. I will need to be more wary of who I log out around. I should let the others know this too. Yuan thought inwardly. It'd be disastrous if someone dangerous were to follow him back to Earth after all. He looked at Yingzi and spoke a moment later. Yingzi, I trust you and I don't mind your presence here, but you'll need to be extra careful in this world. As you know, this world is very small and fragile. If someone like you were to use your abilities, it would fall apart. She nodded. I am aware. I won't do anything to your territory. Thank you. By the way, are you feeling okay? This world doesn't have any chaotic essence. He figured that if humans were unable to cultivate in the primal expanse, those from the primal expanse would have the same issue if the roles were reversed. I guess it does feel a little uncomfortable since I have never been this deprived of chaotic essence, and I won't be able to replenish my chaotic essence if I use them, but it doesn't have any detrimental effects on me. That's good. Anyway, since you're here, is there anything you want to do? I'll show you around. Without hesitation, Yingzi replied, Food. I figured. Yuan smiled. All right, give me a few minutes to shower first. What is a shower? She asked. It's when we clean ourselves with water. What? You don't look dirty. We can shower even if we're not dirty. Is it common for humans to shower? Very. Pretty much everyone showers. Okay. I will shower with you, Yingzi declared. If you want. Yingzi followed Yuan into the bathroom a moment later. Once inside, Yuan began taking off his clothes. Yingzi followed. A certain object on Yuan's body quickly attracted Yingzi's attention. Hey, she spoke. What is that weird thing between your legs? When the beings of primal expanse first took on the appearance of humans, most got rid of what they deemed useless, such as the object between a man's legs. In their eyes, it was nothing but a hindrance since they don't require sexual intercourse to reproduce. Hearing Yingzi's odd question, Yuan subconsciously looked at the area between her legs. However, what was supposed to be there wasn't. It was a smooth area without the slit. I see. He muttered as if he understood something. Looks like beings in the primal expanse only care about the face and overall appearance, so they forgot the most integral part of humans, their private part. This made Yuan wonder about their internal organs. Anyway, unlike you, we humans reproduce through sexual intercourse, which is done by connecting a woman and man's private part. Even though Yingzi had the appearance of a little girl, her real age could potentially rival even the Lord, so Yuan had no issue teaching her. Most importantly, she wasn't even human, hence why Yuan could take a shower with her without batting an eye. Anyway, let me show you how to shower. Yuan quickly changed the subject and pointed to the shower area, which was large enough to fit 2 or even 3 people with ease. You operate it with this handle. Water began pouring from the shower head. You can adjust the water's temperature like this. Turn it this way if you want cold water and the opposite way if you want hot water. Keep it in the middle if you want warm water. Oh. Yingzi stared at the pouring water with interest. It's like rain. Yuan stepped into the shower once the water temperature was to his liking. Once your body is wet, you use body wash to cleanse your body like this. You can also wash your hair with shampoo and finish it with conditioner. Then, you rinse yourself again with water. Yuan stepped out a few minutes later and wiped himself with a towel. That's the gist of it. Pretty simple, right? Yingzi entered the shower next, and she played around with the water temperature while standing below the shower head. In the end, she settled with hot water that was raised to the maximum, quickly steaming the place. Once she was satisfied, she stepped out of the water and started washing her body with body wash and hair with shampoo just like Yuan did. Afterward, she rinsed herself and stepped out, feeling refreshed. We also take baths after showers if you want to relax. It's when you submerge yourself in water. Since we're already here, want to try it out? Yuan asked. Yingzi immediately nodded. Yuan quickly prepared the bath. They entered the large bathtub sometime later and spent the next several minutes in silence. I have been meaning to ask, but who are the 2 female humans outside sleeping next to each other? Yingzi suddenly asked. Chapter 1692 Yingzi 3. Chapter 1692 Yingzi 3. Ah, those 2? They're my partners Meishio and Yuxiang. Yuan explained. Partner? So you're breeding them? She spoke calmly. The weird phrasing and her calm tone sent shivers down Yuan's spine. He cleared his throat and explained, while some humans enter a relationship with the determination and intent of having children, not everyone wants children. We became partners because we love each other. What is love? It's an emotion we feel towards someone we want to be with forever, someone you really like. For example, you like to eat food, right? Love is basically several times more intense than that. I still don't understand. Yuan pondered for a moment before asking her, how do you feel about me? What emotions do I invoke from you? Yingzi stared at his handsome face in silence. You pique my interest. You're always full of surprises. Also, when I look at you, I don't feel the desire to rip you apart, unlike others, she said a moment later. You've followed me for over 2 years now. What? At first, I wanted to learn more about humans. But before I realized it, I found myself wanting to learn more about you. Then how do you feel about following me for the rest of your life? Would you be able to do it? I'm not sure what to feel, but I can't imagine following you for the rest of my life, she responded with a calm expression. Yuan smiled and said, if you can imagine yourself following me, or anyone for that matter, for the rest of your life, you'll get closer to understanding the feeling of love. With that said, love is a very complex emotion even for us humans, and there are many different types of love. Of course, it's also fine if you don't understand it for the rest of your life. It's just an emotion after all. Just like how some people never feel fear, it's possible some will never experience love. By the way, why do you want to understand humans? Yuan suddenly asked. I don't really have a reason. I think I am inherently interested in them, she responded. Is there a problem with that? No, that's fine. We humans often do things for no reason too. Just as Yingzi opened her mouth, another voice interrupted. Welcome back, Yuan. Are you taking a bath? Let me join you. A cheerful voice came from outside the bathroom. The very next moment, a naked Yuxiang could be seen strolling into the bathroom with a bright smile on her face. However, her smile froze when she noticed an unfamiliar little girl resting in the same bathtub as Yuan. Wait. Yuxiang's brain nearly overheated from trying to comprehend the situation. Yuxiang had no qualms if Yuan found more partners, having already come to terms with and accepted the idea. However, the girl with Yuan appeared so young that it would instantly raise many eyebrows wherever they went, and even someone as accepting as Yuxiang couldn't help but feel a sense of concern. Seeing Yuxiang's panicked and perplexed expression, Yuan said, "Calm down, it's not what you're thinking." He proceeded to explain the situation in a calm but hasty manner. First of all, she's not as young as she looks. She's actually from the primal expanse, and she somehow followed me back to Earth when I logged out. After taking a long moment to process this information, Yuxiang asked, "But why are you taking a bath together?" "I am teaching her about humans and our culture. She's also not human. So she's not the third? She asked for clarification. Yuan calmly shook his head. Yuxiang heaved a deep sigh of relief once her worries were eliminated. Oh, I was worried for a second there. Yuxiang went to take a quick shower before entering the bath with them. Hello, I'm Yuxiang, she introduced herself to Yingzi. Yingzi. We were just talking about you, Yingzi said. Really? About what? Yuxiang's eyes flickered with curiosity. Yuan gave her a brief description of the subject. Yuxiang chuckled after hearing it. Is that so? But Yuan, if you ever want a child, don't hesitate to ask me. Yuan silently nodded with a somewhat stiff smile. By the way, how did she follow you from the primal expanse? Yuxiang asked a moment later. Her race has the power to control and enter shadows. She entered my shadow right before I logged off and managed to come out through my real body. Such a thing is possible? That's ridiculous, and has some serious implications. Yuxiang muttered in disbelief. I know what you're thinking, but if Yingzi is able to come to Earth through her own powers, we cannot dismiss the possibility that others could accomplish the same, Yuan sighed. Isn't that really dangerous for us? She asked. It is. However, I doubt there are many beings out there who have such capabilities. Still, we need to be careful where and who we log off around from now on in case we do meet someone similar to Yingzi. Yuxiang nodded with a serious face. Sometime later, the three of them left the bathroom. By the way, the Dragon God Festival was postponed for a month, and he'll be staying here for the whole duration. However, I cannot leave Yingzi unattended, so he'll be accompanying her for a bit. Yuan said. Yuxiang nodded. All right. Then I won't bother you for the time being. Can you let the others know the situation for me? Of course. After giving Yuan a passionate kiss on the lips, Yuxiang returned to Cultivation Online. Meanwhile, Yuan went to find Feng. However, she was also inside Cultivation Online. I guess Yingzi can experience her food later. Yuan brought Yingzi outside. I don't know where to bring you, so let's just wander until you find something you want to eat, Yuan proposed with a casual smile. Okay, she nodded eagerly. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1693 Yingzi 4. Chapter 1693 Yingzi 4. After leaving the Dragon Spiral Mountain, Yuan brought Yingzi to the nearest city for their first destination. Before leaving, Yuan consumed an appearance-altering pill to change his face so they don't attract unwanted attention. We're moving too slow. I'll bring you with me like usual. Yingzi complained halfway there. Yuan nodded and said, Do you see the city in that direction? That's our destination. Yingzi swiftly wrapped her chaotic essence around Yuan and, as if they'd teleported, arrived at the city instantly. Earth was simply too small for someone like Yingzi. With her cultivation, she could easily circle the world a dozen times before someone could even finish blinking their eyes. Either her cultivation is too high for formation to work on her, or it has no effect on those with a chaotic heart. Yuan thought inwardly after realizing the cultivation restricting formation had no effect on Yingzi. After arriving at the city, Yingzi took a moment to savor the unique scenery of tall buildings, cars, and bustling humans. Although she had already seen this view through her divine sense, looking at it with her own eyes and being there in person invoked a special feeling that couldn't be achieved through divine sense. A look of awe appeared on Yingzi's face as she realized the complexity of human technology. Just how did humans achieve this? She mused in a low voice. This is what happens when society focuses on technology rather than cultivation. You may find this hard to believe, but the majority of this world learned about cultivation only a few years ago, Yuan said with a slight smile. Is that why everyone's cultivation is so weak, barely noticeable? Even the weakest beings in the primal expanse would be a big shot here. Unfortunately. Once she had enough of the scenery, Yingzi walked to the nearest restaurant and pointed at it from outside. I want to eat whatever is inside, she said. Yuan nodded and approached the waiter by the entrance. Table for two. Can I also have your biggest table? We'll be ordering one of everything. The waiter looked at Yuan with wide eyes, seemingly in disbelief. One of everything? We have 200 different dishes, you know? Yuan silently nodded. Okay. Please follow me. The waiter led them to one of the biggest tables available and asked again once they were seated, just to confirm, one of everything? Yes. Can you pay in advance first? Yuan retrieved a black card and placed it on the table. Thank you very much, esteemed guest. The waiter's eyes flickered with excitement after seeing the card. Once the payment was confirmed, the waiter placed their order. "Why is it taking so long?" Yingzi complained. Not even 5 minutes later, her disappointed gaze focused on the empty table before her. Besides fast food, they only start cooking once an order is placed. This guarantees the food will come out fresh and hot. After waiting another 10 minutes, their first dish finally arrived, with more dishes coming out nearly every minute. The workers were initially worried they'd need several tables to accommodate all the food, but Yingzi quickly relieved them of their concerns. She devoured each meal within seconds, effortlessly keeping pace with the speed at which dishes were coming out of the kitchen. Yuan didn't touch any of the meals and allowed Yingzi to hoard all of the food. Yingzi's unfathomable ability to consume so much food with her small body left the others shocked. They took out their cell phones and began recording her. Heavens! Is she a professional eater? That already exceeds the level of pros. Where does she keep the food? Is there a black hole in her stomach? The other customers muttered to each other. Once Yingzi finished all of the dishes, she stood up and said to Yuan, "Let's head to the next place immediately." Yuan nodded with a smile. As they walked to their next destination, which was right next door, Yuan asked her, "How does it compare to the meat skewers you've been eating?" With an excited expression on her face, she responded, "The flavors are much more complex and the textures vary greatly between dishes. While some tasted better than meat skewers, others were less enjoyable. However, overall, even the least impressive dish is far superior to anything I've experienced in the Primal Expanse." Once they arrived at the restaurant next door, Yuan showed the waiter his black card and said, "I want to order one of everything on the menu. You can charge me in advance." The waiter silently stared at him as it took some time to comprehend his words. "All right, away." When the customers from the previous restaurant realized Yingzi planned on eating more, they followed her to the next restaurant with their phones out, acting like a group of paparazzi. My God! They ordered one of everything again. How much does she plan on eating? An hour later, Yingzi finished every dish with ease, and they made their way to the next food establishment, repeating the same thing. News of a monstrous little eater began spreading across the internet, quickly gaining traction. Videos of Yingzi eating gained millions of views in just a few hours, and every single one of these viewers was shocked by her infinite appetite. With her newfound fame, Yingzi earned the nickname Little Fairy of Gluttony. However, many were skeptical of her eating ability and claimed it was all fake. Once Yingzi became popular enough, people began traveling to her location just to watch her eat with their own eyes, with some traveling even halfway across the world just to confirm her existence. She's still eating? This is her 27th food establishment, and she'd been eating almost non-stop for the last 10 hours. The onlookers couldn't comprehend how Yingzi could eat so much. When some onlookers attempted to approach her, their advances were immediately halted by Yuan, who was concerned they might annoy Yingzi. He knew that irritating her could potentially lead to disastrous consequences, and he wasn't willing to take that risk. A few stubborn individuals tried to force their way past Yuan, only to be sent flying. "I knew she'd attract attention, but this is too much," he sighed inwardly. Chapter 1694 Yingzi 5. Chapter 1694 Yingzi 5. "Bastard, who the hell do you think you are? We're just trying to speak with the Little Fairy of Gluttony." One of the individuals who tried to force his way through and was sent flying returned shortly after to shout at Yuan. "Little Fairy of Gluttony?" Yuan couldn't help but crack a chuckle after hearing her nickname. "Anyway, she's a friend of mine and we don't need any distractions. I don't mind if you watch from a distance, but stay away from my friend unless you want to die." Of course, Yuan had no intention of killing anyone, but Yingzi was a different story. He didn't know much about her or the limits of her patience, and the last thing he wanted was for things to escalate due to her unpredictable nature. "Unless you want to die." The man repeated Yuan's words in a mocking tone. "Get a load of this bastard." Suddenly, another figure stepped forward. He was a skinny young man with depraved facial features, looking like a ghoul. "Step aside before you get hurt." The skinny man warned Yuan as he showed off his Spirit Grandmaster cultivation base. After a moment of silence, a low sigh resounded. "Should I just get rid of all of them?" Yingzi stopped eating to ask. Yuan looked at her and said, "Just focus on your food. I can deal with them myself." "All right." Yingzi no longer paid them any attention and returned to eating her food. Yuan released a defeated sigh the next moment. He looked at the skinny man and muttered, "Since we've already attracted this much attention, There's no point in hiding myself any longer. Yuan removed his disguise, revealing his true identity to everyone there. Player Yuan? Someone from the crowd instantly recognized him and shouted. What? The same player Yuan who disappeared after stomping the fiery garden of hell. He hasn't shown himself for over 3 years now. Yuan narrowed his eyes at the skinny spirit grandmaster and those around him. I am having trouble breathing with so many people around me. Do you mind giving me some space? The skinny man snapped out of his daze and hurriedly left without uttering another word. The others swiftly followed. Yuan shook his head and returned to his seat. Now that Head made an appearance for the first time in over 3 years, the attention on Yingzi skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. Player Yuan returns after 3 years. Unexpectedly, he's friends with the Little Fairy of Gluttony. What's Player Yuan's relationship with Little Fairy of Gluttony? Player Yuan disguised himself to be with Little Fairy of Gluttony. A secret relationship exposed. Such headlines swiftly filled the internet. Despite the growing attention and the increasing size of the crowd around them, nobody dared to approach Yuan or Yingzi. The spectators kept their distance, content to watch from afar, clearly still fearful of Yuan. He's right, there is something different about this food, she mused inwardly. Hey Yuan, the Dragon God Festival is tomorrow, right? How confident do you feel about it? Lang suddenly asked. A stiff smile appeared on Yuan's face as he responded, honestly? I don't feel confident at all. Seriously? Everyone there turned to look at him while looking surprised. Chapter 1695 The Dragon God Festival begins. Chapter 1695 The Dragon God Festival begins. Seeing their surprised faces, Yuan explained the details of the Dragon God Festival and why he didn't feel confident with them. The Dragon God is a godlike entity with strength that rivals a cultivation god. I cannot fathom someone at my level would be able to absorb it, much less refine it. While he had a heaven-defying physique that allowed him to refine things one typically could not, even extending the limit of what those around his cultivation could absorb, it did not allow him to refine anything without limit. The training grounds were prime examples. It wasn't as if he could walk straight into the highest difficulty without any preparation. His body could still be destroyed if its limit was exceeded. There's also one thing I am worried about. Yuan wore a serious expression as he spoke. There is a chance I might not respawn if I die in the primal expanse. What? Why not? Wang Ming inquired. Because we don't know everything about the system. What if the revival system only works within the 9 heavens? What if I am too far away for it to work? The heavens have no influence in the primal expanse after all. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked, were there any announcements recently? About me specifically? No, announcements are quite rare nowadays and anything related to you would instantly rile up the internet, Feng said. In that case, I'm certain there are limitations to the system. Unless someone has learned celestial-grade techniques before me, there should have been an announcement about it. I even received the notification that I was the first. However, since I was in the primal expanse when it happened, something probably prevented the announcement from being made. What if it's like a cell phone and reception? Wang Xiuying suddenly said. When the others looked at her, she explained, you know how cell phones cannot receive messages without reception. What if the 9 heavens is like a cell phone, and the reason it didn't make any announcement was because it couldn't receive Yuan's data in the primal expanse? That does make sense and definitely a possibility. Yuan nodded with a pondering face. In that case, the announcements may show up once you return to the 9 heavens. I guess we'll find out when he returns. In any case, the chances of my worries coming true have increased now. Yuan sighed. Having said that, I have no plans on backing down now. I am going to tackle this Dragon God Festival, regardless of the risks, he swiftly continued with a resolute face. Although he was concerned, he wasn't losing his mind over it. After all, he was pretty confident the primal monarch wouldn't let him die needlessly. After the feast, Yuan and Yingzi prepared to return to the primal expanse. I have learned a lot about humans this past month, Yingzi said as she sat on his balcony. After seeing so many humans, I think I'll be able to craft a unique appearance for myself. She closed her eyes and began visualizing her ideal appearance. In the next moment, Yingzi's appearance began to transform. Her hair grew longer, its color deepening into a much darker shade of black, resembling the void itself. At the same time, her skin became even paler, almost ghostly white, creating a striking contrast against her dark hair. Her height increased and her face matured slightly. In just a few moments, Yingzi had transformed from a cute, innocent little girl to a strikingly beautiful girl with a naturally aloof expression, and she even wore a black dress that complemented her appearance. From behind, she appeared completely human in every aspect. However, once her front was revealed, she left an unforgettable impression, her appearance teetering between human and something ethereal, almost ghostly. It was an otherworldly sight that would linger in one's mind. "What do you think?" she asked him afterward. Yuan smiled. "I think it suits you perfectly." Yingzi smiled back and said, "Now the only thing left for me to experience is sexual intercourse. Hey, let's have sex before we return to the primal expanse." Her bizarre words instantly shattered whatever atmosphere they just had. However, Yingzi spoke with such clarity that it didn't sound like a joke at all. "That is something you should only experience with the one you love, especially if it's your first time," Yuan responded with a stiff smile. "Is that how it works?" "Normally." Yingzi wore a disappointed look on her face. "Fine." Without saying another word, her figure disappeared into Yuan's shadow. Yuan returned to the primal expanse shortly after. The moment he returned, something in the sky caught his attention. There were millions of gold tokens hovering in the sky, and beings could be seen grabbing one from time to time. As Yuan wondered about their purpose, a familiar presence approached him. "You're back." Long Yeyou spoke with a smile. "Yes. What are those tokens in the sky?" Yuan asked him. "Grab one if you wish to participate in the Dragon God Festival," he briefly explained, showing the token in his grasp. Yuan looked around and noticed that nearly everyone around him had a token, and there were tens of thousands of beings in his area alone. He went to grab one for himself a moment later. "They'll leave just in case the Dragon God matches us in groups," Long Yeyou suddenly said. He wanted to lower his chance of being matched against Yuan as much as possible. "Then I'll see you after the first trial. Good luck, brother Yeyou." "Best of luck to you too." Long Yeyou disappeared into the distance shortly after. The very next day, Dragon God's voice rippled throughout the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. "This is your last chance to grab a token and participate in the festival. In 30 seconds, everyone with a participation token will be teleported to a secluded arena with their opponent, and you will not be able to leave until one of you dies. If both fighters are still alive after a month passes, the space will collapse and kill both of you." The participants were shocked by the last part, which wasn't mentioned until the last second, causing some of the participants to change their minds by tossing their tokens away. Once 30 seconds had passed, everyone holding a token disappeared into thin air without any warning. The Dragon God Festival has begun. Hellfire Dragon clenched his jaws tightly, his gaze so intense it could engulf an entire world in flames. "So what if you're immune to fire? You're still just a human. I don't need my fire to kill someone like you." The Hellfire Dragon started laughing. "I heard that you almost died to Long Yeyou even when he suppressed his cultivation. I am on the same level as Long Yeyou if not a little stronger. There's nothing you can do to defeat me." Yuan chuckled and said, "Brother Yeyou is indeed very powerful. However, if I wanted to kill him during our spar, it wouldn't have been too difficult." "You're bluffing." Hellfire Dragon did not believe Yuan's claims for a second. Not only was Yuan a mere chaotic master, but he was also human, who were inherently weaker than beasts. "Don't think you can rely on the primal monarch's power for everything. It won't work on someone like me. I never intended on using the primal monarch's power anyway." Yuan suddenly retrieved a sword, a majestic sword that emitted an otherworldly aura. "A sword?" Hellfire Dragon raised his eyebrows, looking surprised. However, it was not because he was worried. "That tiny thing won't even scratch my scales, much less." In the midst of Hellfire Dragon's speech, Yuan's arm suddenly flickered, shooting a powerful sword light made of pure enhanced sword chi at him. Sha! The sword light went right through Hellfire Dragon's right wing, cutting through his scales as if they were tofu. A moment later, the Hellfire Dragon released a deafening roar, not out of pain, but from the overwhelming shame he felt after realizing one of his wings had been severed. The humiliation of such a blow stung more than any physical injury could. "I will make you suffer a fate worse than death for this humiliation." Hellfire Dragon released one last roar before charging at Yuan in his human form. Meanwhile, their fight was being spectated by the onlookers who didn't participate in the Dragon God Festival. However, it wasn't just Yuan's fight that was being broadcasted. Every single fight was displayed for everyone to see. Although Yuan's fight attracted some attention at first, they all went to watch another broadcast, one that had nearly the attention of every single onlooker at the moment. This specific broadcast displayed Long Wuqing's dominating performance as she brutally toyed with her opponent, which wasn't too surprising considering her unrivaled status. However, what truly surprised the onlookers and initially captured their attention wasn't just Long Wuqing's presence, but her opponent. What's wrong? Are you already giving up? It hasn't even been half a day since we started. Long Wuqing provoked her opponent with a cold grin on her face. Shut up, her opponent roared, their voice filled with fury. Their entire body was drenched in blood, open wounds covering nearly every inch of their skin. Meanwhile, Long Wuqing appeared unscathed in comparison. What a pitiful sight. Long Wuqing shook her head at the fully transformed dragon before her. Well, it's not like you ever had a chance in the first place, just as I said. Right, little brother? Long Wuqing remarked, her voice cold and condescending as she stared at Long Yeyou with an eerily calm expression, unfazed by his bloodied state. Chapter 1697 The Siblings' Deathmatch. Chapter 1697 The Siblings' Deathmatch. After being teleported, Long Yeyou found himself inside a secluded dimension that was created solely for the Dragon God Festival. He didn't waste any time looking at the void and searched for his opponent. However, he instinctively knew who he had been matched against after sensing her tyrannical presence. Elder sister. Long Yeyou muttered in a calm voice after confirming that his opponent was Long Wuqing. He had already mentally prepared himself to fight Long Wuqing, so he didn't act surprised. As a matter of fact, he had spent the past month preparing to fight Long Wuqing. Why am I not surprised, little brother? Long Wuqing suddenly spoke. Is this fate, or is this father's desire? There was a chance the dragon god had purposefully matched them together. However, they had no proof. Either way, it doesn't matter. I have been prepared to fight you since I decided to participate in the Dragon God Festival, said Long Yeyou. Really? It doesn't look that way. A cold smile crept on Long Wuqing's face as her fierce eyes glared at Long Yejun's left arm, which had been trembling non-stop for some time now. Long Yeyou was surprised when he looked at his arm. He wasn't aware that he had been trembling until Long Wuqing mentioned it. He hastily grabbed his left arm with his right, forcing it to stop trembling. Ha ha ha. Long Wuqing couldn't help but laugh at his reaction. In response, Long Yeyou released a deafening roar as he transformed into a blue and white dragon. What's the rush, little brother? I have a whole month to kill you, so there's plenty of time to play. However, if you wish a swift death, I can also make that happen. Screw you. Long Yeyou cursed before launching a quick dragon's breath at her. However, Long Wuqing casually flung it away with a swatting motion. At least you've become bolder than before. Or maybe it's because you know you are going to die soon. Long Wuqing treated Long Yeyou as a joke. As infuriated as Long Yeyou was, he knew that Long Wuqing had the power to back up her arrogance. Here, I'll lower my cultivation a little more for you. Long Wuqing's cultivation base suddenly dropped from the peak of Chaotic Command to the peak of Chaotic Master, dropping an entire realm. Her actions were incredibly arrogant and the ultimate mockery to her opponent. However, Long Yeyou wasn't offended. If anything, he saw this as his chance. I knew you'd do something like this. Your arrogance will be your downfall. Long Yeyou smiled inwardly as he prepared to launch a full-scale attack on her. After throwing a few more weak attacks at her, Long Yeyou unleashed his most powerful technique, utilizing all of his chaotic essence. When facing a monster like Long Wuqing, a prolonged fight would inevitably end in defeat. There was only one way to stand a chance against someone like her, a swift and sudden attack that exploited her weakness, her arrogance. Her tendency to underestimate her opponents could be her downfall if timed correctly. Unfortunately, Long Yeyou miscalculated one thing, the true extent of Long Wuqing's overwhelming power. Even without transforming, Long Wuqing easily defended against the strongest attack Long Yeyou could muster with his suppressed cultivation. Did you think I was underestimating you? Long Wuqing spoke after seeing the look of disbelief on his face. It's the opposite, little brother. I lowered my cultivation because I know exactly what you're capable of, that you'd still not be able to defeat me. You fucking monster. Long Yeyou muttered. Long Wuqing's eyebrows twitched and she scolded, Just because you're about to die doesn't mean I'll let you say whatever you want. For the next few hours, Long Wuqing would launch an endless assault on Long Yeyou, beating him left and right. Despite Long Yejun's attempt to fight back, Long Wuqing was too overpowering for him to do anything. Damn it. If only our cultivation wasn't restricted this much. No. Even if the limit was higher, the results would have remained the same. Long Yejun sighed inwardly, accepting the results, his defeat. Giving up already? This is why I always mess with you. Long Wuqing looked at him with a disdainful gaze after seeing his state, and she increased the intensity of her attacks. You give up too quickly. You never push yourself past your limit, and you have a habit of running away from your problems. You're a disgrace to the dragon god's bloodline. Long Wuqing's words ignited a fire in Long Yejun's heart, and he released a vicious roar. I know I can't defeat you, but I will survive for a month and then the both of us will perish together. Long Wuqing merely laughed at his plan, showing no signs of concern. She knew that she could defeat him whenever she wanted after all. A few hours later, Long Wuqing sighed, seeing you struggling like this isn't fun at all. I'd rather go watch that human's performance than beat a corpse like you any longer. Any last words? Long Yejun didn't respond. His body hovered in the void like a lifeless corpse, but he wasn't dead just yet. Is that so? I hope you said your goodbyes to your human friend at the very least. He's not a friend? Long Yejun suddenly muttered. He's my brother. I'll consider those your final words. Without saying another word, Long Wuqing unleashed a devastating attack at Long Yejun, far more powerful than anything she had displayed so far. This is your last chance to intervene, father. Long Wuqing muttered in a low voice as the attack enveloped Long Yejun's figure. However, the dragon god did not respond, and Long Yejun's body was obliterated, disintegrating completely under the overwhelming power of Long Wuqing's attack. Long Wuqing found herself back in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary shortly after. Hellfire Dragon's entire being trembled after Yuan mentioned a certain event. A few 100 million years ago, the Hellfire Dragon encountered Tian and provoked him, threatening to make him a human pet. Tian became so enraged that he plucked every single one of Hellfire Dragon's scales, turning him into a scaleless dragon for millions of years until his scales eventually grew back. That incident had humiliated the Hellfire Dragon to such an extent that it drove him to the brink of insanity. Consumed by the desire for revenge, he trained like a madman until he became a powerhouse. It could be said that Tian was the catalyst who shaped the Hellfire Dragon into who he is today, one of the formidable 7 dragon monarchs. However, Tian left the primal expanse shortly after that incident and never appeared again. After hundreds of millions of years, Hellfire Dragon started to forget about that incident. After so long, I have finally found you. Hellfire Dragon muttered in a shivering tone, his voice filled with excitement. I have trained myself to the brink of destruction countless times for this moment. The Hellfire Dragon resumed his assault, pouncing at Yuan with a ferocity unlike anything he had shown before. It was as if his power was being fueled by the immense rage he had contained within him for the past several 100 million years. Yuan remained composed. Despite the Hellfire Dragon's brief boost in power, it was not enough for him to defeat Yuan, who was immune to his fire attacks, and any physical damage dealt would also heal in the blink of an eye. The Hellfire Dragon had no real means of defeating Yuan, and as the fight dragged on, it became clear he was merely wasting his energy. Each of his attacks, though fierce, lacked the effectiveness needed to overcome Yuan's defenses. On the other hand, every time Yuan struck with enhanced sword aura, Hellfire Dragon needed to expend energy to recover from the damage. It was a fight the Hellfire Dragon was destined to lose, and he realized it. However, instead of accepting it calmly like Long Yejun, he became more and more frenzied, desperate. Eventually, Yuan had enough and decided to end the fight with heaven-splitting sword strike. He unleashed a massive beam of light that closely resembled a dragon's breath. In fact, many onlookers mistook heaven-splitting sword strike as dragon's breath. Hellfire Dragon's figure was completely engulfed by the light. Once the attack ended, he was nowhere to be seen. A few moments later, Yuan was transported back to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Congratulations on your victory, Yuan. Long Wuqing approached him shortly after his return. However, if that's the full extent of your capabilities, I'm afraid you won't qualify to be my opponent, she continued. Yuan didn't respond, but it wasn't due to a lack of words. Instead, his attention was drawn to a certain energy lingering around Long Wuqing. Where's brother Yeyou? Yuan suddenly inquired with a serious expression. Long Wuqing refused to respond, merely staring at him in a deafening silence. Did you? Yuan's eyes narrowed. He looked at her as if he already knew the answer. Yes, I killed him, Long Wuqing eventually responded, her voice as calm as it could be. Chapter 1699 End of the First Trial? Chapter 1699 End of the First Trial. After hearing Ling Wuqing's confirmation that Long Yeyou had matched up against her and lost, Yuan tightly clenched his fists. Long Wuqing paid attention to every little detail and asked, Are you angry at me for killing him? Yuan closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath before responding calmly, No, I am not. Oh. Long Wuqing looked genuinely surprised by his answer. She knew humans were emotional beings who are often led astray by their emotions, causing them to do unreasonable things. My, you're surprisingly calm. Totally not what I expected. Yuan raised an eyebrow and responded, Were you expecting me to lash out at you for doing something I would have done myself if I had been matched with him? He had prepared to kill Long Yeyou if they fought, after all. It would be unreasonable for him to be angry at Long Wuqing for doing what she has to do. Everyone who participated in the Dragon God Festival accepted and agreed to such a risk before they grabbed the token, so they couldn't complain about being killed. I like you even more now. But that doesn't mean I will go easy on you later, Long Wuqing said with a smile. Yuan smiled back and said, I may not blame you, but I am still going to vent my anger on you, so I apologize in advance. I thought you weren't angry? She raised an eyebrow. Not at you specifically. Just in general, he clarified. But you're going to take it out on me? Long Wuqing chuckled. If anyone could deal with my anger, it'd be you. I guess that's fine since I'll make things more entertaining, she nodded with an understanding expression. After a few more days, Long Meihui defeated her opponent and returned to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. When she first heard the news of Long Yijin's death, she didn't believe it. However, after she found Long Wuqing and confirmed Long Yijin's death, Long Meihui broke down in tears. Wah! This is why I didn't want to participate. Why would the dragon god do this? Let his own descendants die. She cried out loud. Stop exaggerating. It's not like he's gone forever. Long Wuqing shook her head. As a matter of fact, this isn't his first time dying, she suddenly revealed. I know that, but it could potentially be millions of years before I see him again. What's a few million years to beings like us? Long Wuqing sighed. That's not the point. Long Meihui screamed. Huh. Who the hell do you think you are raising your voice at? Long Wuqing glared at her with narrowed eyes. Sorry? Long Meihui immediately shrunk her body, looking like a timid rabbit. Long Wuqing sneered. Long Meihui withdrew to Yuan's side and asked him, Are you okay? I am upset about Brother Yijin's death, but this is the result if you lose. Long Meihui sighed. I hope he reincarnates soon. I don't think I can handle being alone with my older sister. She's too scary. Yuan pondered for a moment before asking, How long does it usually take for one to reincarnate? It depends on factors I am unfamiliar with. He could immediately reincarnate or it could take hundreds of millions of years, she answered. I see. I hope he reincarnates sooner than later. After a brief moment of silence, Yuan spoke again. One more thing. Will he remember memories of his past life? I can't say for sure. There's a chance he might reincarnate without his memories, but I'm sure they will still be deep within his consciousness and eventually resurface. Thank you. They proceeded to spectate the other ongoing fights for the remainder of the month. Long Wuqing approached Yuan again a few days later. Hey, do you have any more of those skewers? She asked him without any shame or hesitation in her voice. You still have an appetite after everything that happened? Yuan looked at her with a look of disbelief. Why not? She responded in an unfazed manner. Yuan couldn't help but admire her carefree nature. It was as if nothing in this world could truly bother her. So, do you have any or not? Or are you going to refuse because I killed Long Yeyou? Don't be so petty, she continued. He sighed. I do have some, but I am running low on supply, so I cannot give them out so casually. Sounds like an excuse to me, she muttered with a displeased look. However, Yuan wasn't lying because he was being petty. He was really running low on meat skewers. He had a chance to replenish his supply when he returned to Earth, but he couldn't bring them back through the system and had to rely on Yingzi, who was capable of bypassing the system and bringing whatever she wanted back with her. That said, Yingzi had managed to acquire a tremendous amount of meat skewers. During her food tour, she bought out the entire stock of every single stall she encountered. Of course, it was done using Yuan's money. Yingzi has plenty of meat skewers, but I doubt she'd be willing to share them. Yuan smiled inwardly. He also had no authority to make her share them, even if it was purchased with his money. If you give me some, I'll share Long Yijin's final words with you, Long Wuqing suddenly bargained. Yuan raised an eyebrow at her words. His final words? He muttered. All right. Yuan retrieved a handful of meat skewers and handed them to Long Wuqing, who immediately repeated Long Yijin's final words to him. Word for word. I see. A warm smile appeared on Yuan's face after hearing it. As the end of the first trial approached, more and more participants returned to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. However, there were still plenty of matches that seemed far from being concluded. Once the time limit had been reached, all of the secluded dimensions were forcefully closed, crushing anyone who remained inside them without any warning. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1700 Refining the Dragon God's Blood. Chapter 1700 Refining the Dragon God's Blood. Congratulations to those of you who have survived the first trial. The Dragon God's voice rippled throughout the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. You may choose to continue to the second trial or give up now. Those of you who will continue, keep the token in your grasp. Otherwise, crush it. You have an hour to decide. Once the Dragon God's voice faded, everyone began mumbling to each other. He said that most of us won't even be able to refine a single drop of blood, correct? Do you think he's serious, or is he trying to scare us into forfeiting? Knowing the Dragon God, it could go both ways. It's extremely risky, no doubt. However, the benefit of this trial is worth the risk, so I am going to risk it. Many of us have risked our lives for much less. This is a no-brainer for me. Most of the participants shared similar sentiments. Only a few remained hesitant. However, after thinking about it, they realized if they gave up now, they would have fought to the death for nothing in the previous trial. In the end, everyone who survived the first trial decided to participate in the second trial. An hour later, the golden token suddenly emitted a golden light, and a small bottle materialized before the participants. Every participant had a single bottle containing 10 drops of the Dragon God's blood. You will need to refine at least 9 drops of blood to pass the second trial within 3 months. If you manage to refine all 10 drops of blood, I will give you a special reward at the end. The Dragon God's voice returned. What kind of reward? The participants mused to themselves. However, the Dragon God did not respond to their curiosity and disappeared after saying, "The second trial begins now." Yuan inspected the bottle of blood in his grasp. He had a quarter of a year to refine 9 drops of blood, which seemed plenty of time at a glance. However, after inspecting the Dragon God's blood, each drop contained an immense amount of chaotic essence that could take months if not years to refine, but they're only given 3 months to refine 9 drops, which seemed impossible. The first participant to act and consume a drop of the Dragon God's blood was Long Wuqing. She retrieved a drop and swallowed it without hesitation. She then closed her eyes and began to cultivate in silence. Many participants followed and consumed their first drop. Ack! Suddenly, a painful shout pierced the air, drawing everyone's attention. As heads turned toward the source of the scream, the individual who had cried out exploded into a gruesome, bloody mess before anyone could fully process what had happened. However, that was just the beginning, and the situation quickly grew more chaotic as more and more participants exploded after failing to refine the Dragon God's blood. The gruesome scene terrified the others, but they couldn't forfeit now and forcefully consumed their first drop of blood. In half an hour, nearly 70% of the participants had perished from just the first drop of blood. There were tens of millions of participants who had passed the first trial, so one could imagine the carnage that occurred within these 30 minutes. Yuan was one of the last participants to consume the Dragon God's blood. As soon as the first drop entered his body, a powerful surge of energy began coursing through his veins, filling him with a strength unlike anything he had felt before. However, that sensation was short-lived. Shortly after his body began surging with energy, something within his body activated and started consuming the energy at a tremendous rate. The energy from the Dragon God's blood disappeared within minutes, causing Yuan to raise an eyebrow. When nothing else happened after waiting for several minutes, Yuan looked at the bottle of blood in his grasp. After some consideration, he retrieved the second drop of blood and consumed it. His actions greatly bewildered the onlookers. Didn't he just consume a drop of blood a few minutes ago? You're saying he's already on the second drop? Impossible. Even the unrivaled Tyrant is still on her first drop of blood. You definitely saw it wrong and had just consumed his first drop. The onlookers quickly dismissed the possibility that Yuan had already refined the first drop of blood, let alone started on the second. Everyone, that is, except for Yingzi. Having been watching Yuan closely from the very beginning, she was certain that he had already refined the first drop of the dragon god's blood. There's no way Head just refined a drop of my enhanced blood in just a few minutes. Did you do something to him? The dragon god questioned the primal monarch after witnessing this. The primal monarch calmly shook his head and refuted, "No, I have nothing to do with this." Yuan absorbed the second drop of blood just as fast as the first. No, it was slightly faster. No. There's just no way. The dragon god exclaimed as he watched Yuan consume the third drop of blood, his voice filled with disbelief. You must have done something to help him. I refuse to believe a human has the capability to refine my blood this quickly. The primal monarch glared at him and sneered, "Why would I lie to you? If I said I have nothing to do with it, then I didn't." His tone was cold, leaving no room for doubt or further questioning. The dragon god clenched his fists as he returned to focusing on Yuan, who was already preparing to consume the fourth drop of blood. A few moments later. Chapter 1702 The Final Trial. Chapter 1702 The Final Trial. Long before Long Wu Qing even refined her ninth drop of blood, every other participant had already been disqualified. Some tried to refine more blood than they could handle and perished, while others gave up after refining their first drop of blood. The vast majority of participants perished in the second trial, meaning tens of millions of participants were killed in just a few months. This level of casualty was unprecedented in the entire primal expanse and would definitely go down in history as the most deadly dragon god festival. Of those few thousand participants who survived, about 95% of them only refined a single drop of blood. The rest of them only managed to absorb 2 drops of blood at most, with Long Meihui beating everyone at 5 drops of blood. What? You're telling me that Yuan, a human, had managed to refine all 10 drops of blood in less than a day? As if I'd believe that, you idiot. Long Meihui didn't dare to believe this information despite being told by many witnesses. Where is Yuan right now? I want to verify it with him. We don't know where he went. That human disappeared shortly after refining all 10 drops of blood. The dragon god probably took him away. Understandably so too. Long Meihui scanned the entire divine dragon sanctuary for Yuan's presence, and sure enough, he had vanished completely. That doesn't prove anything. Long Meihui continued being in denial. It was simply too hard to believe that a human with such a low cultivation could absorb the dragon god's blood, much less refine it. However, when she recalled Yuan's unbelievable achievements prior to the Dragon God Festival, his newest achievement became less unbelievable. Does my elder sister know about this? Long Meihui asked. The onlookers immediately shook their heads. Who'd dare be the one to let her know that someone, a mere human, had managed to completely surpass her? She also disappeared somewhere after she completed the trial. Not many people dared to speak with Long Wu Qing under normal circumstances, so it was even less likely that someone would approach her with bad news. So she doesn't know. I wonder how she'll react once she realizes. Long Meihui muttered. Meanwhile, somewhere in the infinite expanse, Yuan continued absorbing the dragon god's blood. After acquiring a dragon core, Yuan's body naturally absorbed the surrounding energy with astonishing speed, as if he were actively cultivating even when at rest. This meant that even when sleeping, he'd cultivate faster than someone actively trying their hardest, giving him an unfair advantage during a fight when his enemy cannot replenish spiritual energy as easily. Suddenly, ding! Yuan's dragon core had unexpectedly fused with his chaotic heart. Now it can absorb both spiritual energy and chaotic essence without any issue. You have 1 day left. Yuan sighed inwardly, unable to do anything to reverse or fix the situation. The primal monarch appeared and prepared to save him. However, the dragon god intervened, saying, "You shouldn't spoil your child too much. In case you forgot, we're still in the middle of the dragon god festival. I will not allow any intervention even if it's from you. Get out of my way." A vicious glint flickered within the primal monarch's eyes, and his aura emitted killing intent. For the first time ever, the primal monarch displayed bloodlust. The dragon god trembled, but he was unrelenting, even prepared to fight to death. Suddenly, a mythical aura appeared, captivating both the dragon god and the primal monarch. When they followed the aura's direction, it led them directly to Yuan. "What the?" the dragon god subconsciously muttered. His eyes widened as he witnessed a golden object emerging from Yuan's chest. Once fully exposed, it was revealed to be a spear-like object. When the dragon god attempted to probe the spear with his divine sense, it was instantly and forcefully cancelled, something that could only be done by an entity of equal or stronger prowess. This unexpected resistance left him momentarily taken aback. Suddenly, the golden spear's tip aimed directly at Yuan and shot forward. It pierced through the front of his chest and exited out his back, completely penetrating his body in one swift, brutal motion. Ding. Dragon God's Vengeance. Level, Max. Rank, Soul Weapon, Growth Rate. Requirement, can only be wielded by player Yuan. Description, a beautiful golden spear with an unknown origin. It is shrouded with a mysterious aura that will render all spiritual energy useless. Unique ability, requires level 19 dragon symbols to activate. When this weapon is out, it greatly enhances the strength of its wielder's dragon techniques. Unique ability, 2 requires level 39 dragon symbols to activate. If a dragon is killed with this weapon, the effects of this weapon will increase based on the dragon's strength. This weapon also deals 100,000% increased damage to dragons and 10,000% increased damage to other beings. Unique ability, 3 requires level 69 dragon symbols to activate. Allows the user to use Dragon God's Vengeance's special technique, Dragon God Suppression. If an enemy is struck by Dragon God Suppression, their bloodline will be sealed. This effect can only be removed by the Dragon God's Vengeance. Only one bloodline can be sealed at a time. Unique ability, 4 requires level 99 dragon symbols to activate. Chapter 1704 End of the Dragon God Festival. Chapter 1704 End of the Dragon God Festival. Once the Dragon God's Vengeance helped him absorb some of the Dragon God's blood essence, Yuan no longer felt like he was expanding uncontrollably. However, he was still having trouble refining it. The Dragon God stared at the Dragon God's Vengeance with a profound expression, his gaze sharp and intense, almost as if he were trying to stare a hole into it. Although he couldn't see inside the Dragon God's Vengeance, he was sure it contained a powerful soul, one strong enough to cancel out his divine sense. While the Dragon God hadn't used his full strength in his initial attempt to peer inside the spear, he had no intention of trying again. He didn't want to risk angering the being within, and he had a strong sense that even with his full power, the outcome would remain unchanged. Meanwhile, Long Wuqing also struggled to refine the Dragon God's blood essence. While she was strong enough to endure its overwhelming energy, she quickly realized that she would need far longer than a month to refine the blood essence fully. However, she didn't give up and tried her best. "Hey, isn't that considered cheating?" one of the onlookers suddenly commented after witnessing everything. "You literally just spoke my mind. Using a treasure to assist you is outright cheating." "But was there a rule that prohibited them from using treasures?" someone asked. "No, and the Dragon God didn't immediately disqualify him, so it must be within the rules." The onlookers began debating with each other on the legality of Yuan using the Dragon God's Vengeance to assist him in refining the Dragon God's blood essence. Although it was not explicitly stated, using external treasures during this trial was certainly against the rules. However, the Dragon God did not consider the Dragon God's Vengeance an external treasure for one simple reason, because it was directly connected to Yuan's soul. In that sense, it was more a part of his body than a separate item, making it an exception. Having said that, even if Yuan cheated a little, the Dragon God wouldn't have minded. After all, it was unreasonable to expect a human at Yuan's cultivation level to refine his blood essence in the first place. 2 weeks later. Progress, 11%, progress, 50%. Although the Dragon God's blood essence had been completely refined, Yuan had only managed to refine a portion of it, with the Dragon God's Vengeance refining the majority of it. Congratulations, you have won, becoming this year's Dragon God Festival winner. The Dragon God approached him shortly after he finished. Yuan pulled the Dragon God's vengeance out of his chest and looked at it with a pondering face before asking, "Doesn't this count as cheating since I didn't technically refine your blood essence myself?" The Dragon God smiled, "You're an honest one, huh? Don't worry, it's fine. I doubt anyone else would be able to replicate what you did even with the help of treasures." Yuan nodded. He turned to look at Long Wuxia the next moment. She was still trying to refine the blood essence, and her entire body was bulging with veins. The Dragon God suddenly turned his gaze toward her, making a swift grasping motion. In an instant, he forcefully ejected his blood essence from her body. Even if a blood essence had been absorbed, as long as it hadn't been fully refined, it could still be retrieved. Afterward, Long Wuxia immediately began gasping for air, her complexion as pale as a ghost. Despite her alarming appearance, she was merely exhausted and not physically injured. After catching her breath, she turned to look at Yuan and then the Dragon God. "I see, so I lost, huh?" she muttered in a bitter voice. Long Wuxia struggled to get on her feet before limping toward Yuan. "In 1 month, no, we will have our match in 1 week, she said with a fierce gaze. Yuan then said, "I don't mind delaying it a little so you can recover properly. This kind of injury will heal within days, and I want to fight you as soon as possible." He nodded, "If you insist, we will fight in a week. Meet me at the Endless Arena exactly a week from now," she said. "I understand." After receiving Yuan's confirmation, Long Wuxia disappeared into thin air. "As the Dragon God Festival winner, you have earned 1 wish. Tell me your wish," said the Dragon God a moment later. Yuan stared at him in the eyes and spoke in a clear and calm voice, "I want to borrow the sacred chalice of purification. I need to bring it outside the Divine Dragon Sanctuary." The Dragon God didn't immediately respond, but his eyes were wide with disbelief. That's your wish? You can have almost anything, you know?" The Dragon God almost couldn't believe how simple Yuan's wish was and had to double-check. "I don't need anything else. I just need to borrow the sacred chalice of purification," Yuan repeated. The Dragon God fell silent again. Sometime later he sighed, "If that's your wish, so be it. However, rather than just letting you borrow it, he'll let you keep it. The sacred chalice of purification is a powerful treasure that can remove almost any curse out there." The Dragon God made a swift grasping motion toward a specific direction. Moments later, a beautiful golden chalice materialized in his hand, adorned with 2 lifelike dragons swimming around the cup. He handed the treasure to Yuan the next moment. Sacred Chalice of Purification. Grade, Celestial, Quality, Peak. Description, a treasure of unknown origins. It has the power to remove almost all curses. Feed the chalice a drop of blood from the target to remove their curses. "Thank you." Yuan immediately tossed the chalice inside his spatial ring. "Now that the Dragon God Festival is over, I would like to have a private word with you. It's related to the soul within that spear of yours." "Sorry, but I don't think." Just as Yuan opened his mouth, the Dragon God's vengeance trembled, and Dragon Goddess Yeyou materialized before them. Yuan immediately noticed that she looked a lot more complete than before. Is this due to the Dragon God's blood essence? He wondered inwardly. "As I thought, it was you," Dragon God muttered after seeing Dragon Goddess Yeyou with his own eyes. "Do you remember me?" he asked, his voice emotional. "I do, but I only regained my memories of the primal expanse recently," she responded in a nonchalant voice. "Why are you in that state?" Dragon God then asked. Dragon Goddess Yeyou remained silent. "I never thought I would see you again, sister," Dragon God continued speaking. "What?" Yuan's eyes widened with shock after hearing the word sister come out of the Dragon God's mouth. Dragon God looked at him and smiled. "Yes, that's right. She's my sister, my twin sister. However, having said that, we were originally one being." Yuan wore a puzzled look on his face. "We were the Dragon God, a single being. However, we eventually split into 2, becoming 2 different individuals," he explained. "How does something like that even work?" Yuan asked. "We were 2 souls born into a single body, so we don't share the same mind," the Dragon God further explained. "Because of that, we were able to split ourselves into 2 and have our own bodies. However, in doing so, we also split our talents and prowess in half. Yuan was shocked by this information, as this meant that the Dragon God and Dragon Goddess Yeyou only had half of their original strength. Yet, they were still able to stand at the peak of their respective world. How powerful would they become if they returned to being a single being again? Would they surpass even the Primal Monarch? Yuan wondered as he glanced at the Primal Monarch. As if he could read Yuan's mind, the Primal Monarch said, "No, they won't. I have defeated them even before they split into two. That was billions of years ago. Things might be different now." Dragon God rebuked. He then stopped paying attention to the Primal Monarch and returned to looking at Dragon Goddess Yeyou. "Now that you've returned to the Primal Expanse, will you stay? I can help heal your damaged soul and restore your body?" he asked. "No, I still have unfulfilled business. Also, I left this place for a reason." "I see. At least I got to see you again, as brief as it may be." Dragon Goddess Yeyou suddenly turned to look at Yuan, her gaze seemingly demanding something from him. "How long do you plan on ignoring me? You should have regained most of your memories by now. Are you still going to act like you don't know why I am upset?" she asked. Yuan suddenly became silent. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, they flickered with a profound light, and his entire demeanor shifted. It was as if a deep, ancient soul had awakened within him, transforming his presence entirely. "I wasn't pretending, nor am I ignoring you. I just didn't want to bother you before I figured out how to make it up to you," Yuan said with a bittersweet smile. "I'm sorry, Yeyou." Yuan dropped the formalities, calling her directly by her name. "Humph," she sneered. Chapter 1706 Their Relationship. Chapter 1706 Their Relationship. What's your relationship with my sister?" The Dragon God inquired as he stared at Yuan with raised eyebrows. "She's my follower." Yuan stopped mid-sentence as Dragon Goddess Yeyou shot him a dangerous glare, her eyes warning him not to continue. "Ahem." Yuan quickly cleared his throat before correcting himself. "She's my lover." Hearing this unexpected answer, the Dragon God's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets from shock. The Dragon God turned to look at Dragon Goddess Yeyou for confirmation. Although Dragon Goddess Yeyou appeared nonchalant at a glance, her eyes flickered with delight. "No way." The Dragon God could feel his knees weakening. He had never felt so weak and vulnerable before. "How did it happen?" he asked a moment later. Dragon Goddess Yeyou frowned and said, "Stop inquiring. It's none of your business anyway. How can you say that to your twin brother? What if the two of you produce another Dragon God's descendant? We may have split, but we're both still considered Dragon God." Dragon Goddess Yeyou sneered, "Even if we do, it's still none of your business." The Dragon God wore a shocked look on his face before asking in a trembling voice, "Don't tell me, you already have a child?" Dragon Goddess Yeyou's body trembled in anger. "You're lucky I don't have a physical body to beat you up right now," she growled. The Dragon God stopped joking and became serious. "Speaking of your condition, what happened?" Dragon Goddess Yeyou ignored him and looked at Yuan instead. "Do you remember your last moments, how you died?" she asked. Yuan closed his eyes and responded, "Not everything. It's still a little fuzzy, but I can make out the silhouette of several inhuman figures, and I was engaged in a fight with them." "Then forget it. We can talk about this once you remember." "You can't just tell me? If you want to risk your soul shattering, I don't mind telling you." Yuan's eyes widened at her words. "Why would telling me have such a dangerous risk?" "There exists forbidden knowledge which could trigger something akin to a curse or heavenly law if you reveal them to someone who doesn't have the authority or capability to hear it," she explained. "It's like teaching a mortal an immortal technique so profound that it overwhelms and collapses their mind." "I see," Yuan muttered with a look of understanding. "Well, I'll eventually remember. By the way, Yeyou, what are you doing inside this soul weapon?" he asked her next. "And do you know what happened to the others? We were with you when you died. Some of us perished alongside you, but some survived. I barely survived with my soul. After escaping, I met with the dragon ancestor, who placed me inside this unoccupied soul weapon." Yuan clenched his fists after hearing that some of the 9 divine supremes had perished. "Do you know who died and who survived?" he asked. Dragon Goddess Yeyou pondered for a moment before responding. "As far as I know, Crimson Terror, Heavenly White Tiger God, Divine Yin Yang Crane, and the Shadow Dweller all perished. Right, that dumb pigeon Feng Yumming also died. Yuan's heart felt a squeezing pain after hearing that 5 of the 9 divine supremes had perished. Although Feng Yumming died, shall eventually reincarnate. As for the others, I'm not so sure. It might be possible if their souls weren't destroyed during that battle. As for the Shadow Dweller, their race is a little unique, so I don't know what happened to her. About Xingrui. I know that she is currently drifting somewhere out there in the starry sky, probably starving and consuming stars like before. I need to find her as soon as possible. Yuan revealed what he knew about the Eater of Stars situation. If you can restore my body, I can look for her, Dragon Goddess Yeyou said. Yuan turned to look at the Dragon God and spoke. You said you can help her restore her body? Oh. I can create another body from scratch for her, but that will take time, especially if she wants it to be as strong as before, he said. How long exactly? Hard to say, but it'll definitely take at least 100 million years. Yuan fell silent. There was no way he could wait that long. Do you have another idea? Yuan looked at Dragon Goddess Yeyou. If you bring me back to my world, I will be able to create another body using the resources there, and it won't take more than a few years, she said. Where is your world? And why didn't you ask the dragon ancestor to bring you there before? Because he cannot access it. Only you and I have access. However, I am unable to access it in my current condition. Are you sure you'll be able to access it? I have been reincarnated. I'm sure. The key to my world is the 9 dragon symbols within your body. You have it, no? Yuan's eyes widened at her words and muttered, So you're the source of the 9 dragon symbols? Dragon Goddess Yeyou suddenly frowned and angrily said, You don't remember? So you have no idea what the 9 dragon symbols represent? Sorry? I'm still missing bits and pieces of my memories. Unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. After shouting bewilderedly, Dragon Goddess Yeyou abruptly returned to the Dragon God's vengeance. Wait. What about your world? Where can I find it? I don't remember. Yuan hastily asked. No response. Dragon Goddess Yeyou has returned to ignoring him. She's a handful, am I right? She was like that when we were a single being. I couldn't handle it, so I suggested we have our own bodies. The Dragon God chuckled. Yuan merely showed a bittersweet smile. He didn't dare to respond to the Dragon God, fearing it angered Dragon Goddess Yeyou even more. Anyway, it's about time I leave, Yuan said a moment later. What about your match with my eldest daughter? He inquired with raised eyebrows. I'll return for it once I deal with my business, Yuan said. I heard that almost any wish could be granted. To think he'd used such a precious opportunity just to save my daughter. Primordial Phoenix looked at Yuan in a different light. She accepted the sacred chalice of purification and said, Give me a week, a month at most to remove the curse. Yuan nodded and said, He'll return to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary in the meantime. I still have some business left there. He'll be back after a week or so. Do whatever you want. Yuan returned to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary shortly after and waited for his appointment with Long Wuqing to arrive. As the days passed, beings from all over the Divine Dragon Sanctuary gathered around the endless arena to witness Yuan's fight with Long Wuqing. The Dragon God even decided to broadcast it throughout the territory. Who do you think will win? Although the human has won the Dragon God Festival, he has almost no chance to defeat the Unrivaled Tyrant in an actual fight. The Unrivaled Tyrant is too overpowered. There's no way she'll lose to a human. I don't know about that. If you watched how he dealt with Hellfire Dragon, you wouldn't say that with such confidence. Even 100 Hellfire Dragons cannot compare to a single Unrivaled Tyrant. Time passed swiftly, and the moment for Yuan and Long Wuqing's highly anticipated match had finally arrived. Long Wuqing arrived in her petite human form, the one she saved Yuan in. Have you recovered? Yuan asked her. Yes, I have made a complete recovery, she calmly nodded. So, any rules before we begin? He continued. Since this is only a spar, I don't think we should seriously aim for each other's throat. Of course, accidents could happen, but that's different from purposefully aiming for the heart. Yuan nodded. I agree. I don't wish to turn this into a death match. Next, I will lower my cultivation to match yours. Long Wuqing lowered her cultivation to the perfect chaotic master. Do you have anything to add to the rules? She asked. Yuan pondered for a moment before speaking. Let's set the time limit to 7 days. Also, to make this more interesting, we'll each have 3 lives. How will that work? She raised an eyebrow. While I won't die even if you destroy my heart, we'll still consider that as a death, he explained. I see. I can do that, Long Wuqing responded confidently. In an instant, she summoned 3 thin barriers around her body, each one perfectly conforming to her figure, outlining her form with precision. Each barrier will represent 1 life. If you manage to destroy all 3 at once, he'll consider it my loss, she said. Whenever you're ready. Long Wuqing said a moment later. Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven. Ready. The instant Yuan uttered those words, Long Wuqing opened her mouth and released a massive dragon's breath that completely engulfed Yuan's figure. The output and strength of her dragon's breath were at least 10 times stronger than the one Long Yeyou released while sparring with Yuan with his suppressed cultivation. Guess I wasn't completely ready, Yuan said after escaping the dragon's breath, but not before dying once to it. Chapter 1708 Fighting Long Wuqing. Chapter 1708 Fighting Long Wuqing. Hey, stop messing around and fight me seriously. You don't have the leisure to hold back against me. Just come at me with your full strength. Long Wuqing said to him with a disappointed frown on her face. This was the first time she faced an opponent who didn't immediately go all out against her. It was a weird feeling being on the receiving end since she would often be the one to hold back. Sorry, it's a bad habit of mine to slowly ramp things up as I get used to my opponent's strength. Yuan apologized. He was used to slowly increasing his strength to match his opponent so he wouldn't end the fight too quickly. However, Long Wuqing was an opponent who could easily fight someone several realms above her own strength just like Yuan. That said, I can also say the same for you. Yuan said, and his aura suddenly skyrocketed. He entered his dragon transformation and abruptly unleashed heaven-splitting sword strike on Long Wuqing, instantly engulfing her body. However, Long Wuqing didn't try to escape from his strike and stood still until the very end. Once heaven-splitting sword strike ended, Yuan could see that one of the 3 barriers around Long Wuqing was heavily cracked. You're right. I should probably heed my own advice. As an apology, I'll give you one of my lives. Long Wuqing swung her arm, destroying the cracked barrier. You really didn't need to do that. Well, it's done now, so there's no point lingering on it. Long Wuqing's aura suddenly intensified and began surging toward the clouds. Not only did she release her full presence, but she also transformed, causing iridescent, rainbow-colored scales to appear across her body, shimmering with powerful and otherworldly energy. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Long Wuqing, a sublime elemental dragon, the eldest of the dragon god's descendants. I am Yuan, a human. After their greeting, Yuan and Long Wuqing clashed with each other, their collusion sending powerful shockwaves in every direction. If the dragon god hadn't covered the endless arena with a barrier to prevent their destruction from spreading too far, the nearby beings would have been affected by the shockwaves of their energy clashing. Although their cultivation was only at the perfect chaotic master, their prowess far exceeded their cultivation by several realms. In reality, they were displaying the strength of a perfect chaotic king, a power comparable to the divine ancestor realm in human cultivation. 9 supreme swords. 9 dragons purgatory. Immortal rending sword strike. Tyrant's grand sunder. Yuan and Long Wuqing continued exchanging techniques for several hours without pause, each move met with equal skill and power, with neither gaining an advantage over the other. The onlookers were absolutely gobsmacked by the spectacle. If you want to continue, you can find somebody else. I have other business to attend to. Chapter 1710 Long Wuqing's Mark. Chapter 1710 Long Wuqing's Mark. No. The others aren't capable of injuring me even if I matched their cultivation, and I am not the type to purposefully let someone beat me. Long Wuqing said, responding to his suggestion. Come on, let's fight for another week, even another day will be enough. Yuan shook his head and said, I have already lost all desire to fight. If you want to fight, we can do it another time. You promise? Yuan nodded, but he wasn't sure he would be able to fulfill this promise anytime soon. After all, he will be returning to the Nine Heavens soon, and it might be a really long time before he visits the primal expanse again. Moreover, there was the possibility that he might never return. However, he had no intention of letting Long Wuqing know of this. She's someone who's lived for billions of years. I'm sure a few thousand, or even a few million years mean nothing to her. Yuan thought. As if to acknowledge their promise, Long Wuqing returned to her human form and stopped suppressing her cultivation. Right after she entered her human form, Long Wuqing approached Yuan and abruptly grasped his neck with her hand. What are you? Just as Yuan opened his mouth to speak, Long Wuqing suddenly pulled him toward her, pressing her lips firmly against his in a bold, unexpected move. Yuan didn't even bother trying to escape and accepted his fate because he knew that he wouldn't be able to escape Long Wuqing with her full cultivation even if he had access to heaven's supremacy. Marked? What is this? Yuan wondered inwardly after seeing this notification. I've just placed a mark on you so I will know where you are at all times, she said after releasing him. Why do you want to know where I am at all times? He asked with raised eyebrows. Just in case, she calmly said. In case of what? Who knows, she shrugged. But why a kiss? I thought humans liked that sort of thing. Don't think too much about it. The mark won't harm you or affect you in any way, she reassured him. That's not why, forget it. Yuan realized it was pointless to argue with Long Wuqing. Anyway, I'm going to leave now. Where are you going? She asked out of curiosity. Yuan didn't immediately respond as he pondered whether it would be a good idea to tell someone eccentric like Long Wuqing. He didn't mind telling the Dragon God because he was confident the Dragon God wouldn't do anything foolish. Long Wuqing, on the other hand, was almost impossible to predict. Seeing that Yuan remained silent, Long Wuqing smiled and said, Are you going to meet with a phoenix? Yuan raised an eyebrow and asked, How can you tell? Before we fought, I noticed the lingering scent of a phoenix from you, she explained. After all, Yuan was just speaking with the primordial phoenix before he returned to the divine dragon sanctuary. However, the primordial phoenix shook her head and said, I may have removed your curse, but it was mostly with the assistance of this treasure, which was obtained by your human friend there. Young master. Feng Yuxiang looked at him with sparkling eyes. He smiled and said, He'll tell you about it later since it's a long story. She nodded and then looked at the primordial phoenix. By the way, he's not a friend. He's my master, and I am his #1 loyal servant. The primordial phoenix's eyebrows began twitching uncontrollably after hearing such words. A servant? She muttered in a trembling voice, almost as if she was trying to suppress her anger. Ultimately, she failed, and after a moment of silence, the primordial phoenix erupted, Unacceptable. No child of mine will be lowered to the status of a mere servant. That's not for you to decide. Feng Yuxiang rebuked. Yuan then spoke, Are you sure, Feng? Now that your curse has been lifted, you are essentially free to go, as we had initially agreed. I already told you that I want to follow you even after my curse is lifted. My mind hasn't changed even in the slightest. I will follow you until the end of time. Feng Yuxiang spoke in a stubborn voice, her face resolute. The primordial phoenix narrowed her eyes at Feng Yuxiang. Whatever. You'll definitely change your mind once you recover your memories, so it's only a matter of time anyway, she said a moment later. Feng Yuxiang didn't respond to the primordial phoenix's words. Instead, she looked at Yuan and asked, By the way, how long have I been asleep? It's been about 3 years, I guess. 3 years. Feng Yuxiang cried out loud. Where are you currently in the 9 heavens? Knowing how fast Yuan progressed, she wouldn't be surprised if had already reached the 7th heaven or above. We're only in the 4th heaven. I have spent the last 3 years in the primal expanse. While I could have left sooner, 2 years ago I couldn't leave knowing you could be healed here. Young master. Feng Yuxiang began tearing up again. I'm so sorry. Because of my uselessness, I have become a burden and set you back 3 whole years. I've wasted 3 years of your precious life. Yuan wiped the tears off her face and smiled. That's nonsense. I'd spend 10 years here for you, let alone 3. Also, none of my time here was wasted. As a matter of fact, I think I have grown more here than I would have in the 9 heavens. There are many beings here that rival the Great One and the Dragon Ancestor, who are probably only found in the 9th heaven, and I am still a long way from reaching them. 3 years may seem like a lot at a glance, but considering how much Yuan has grown in the primal expanse, I'd probably need tens, if not hundreds, of years to achieve the same results in the 9 heavens. If you say so. Feng Yuxiang nodded, feeling much better knowing she didn't hinder Yuan's growth. By the way, how's she melee?